All right, all right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. We have a new month here, a very new month. Today is August 1st. Welcome to the Black Brain Trust. Today is Wednesday. We're going to go over geopolitics. Got a nice show for you all, a couple good topics. Uh, so, with that said, let's get started. Let's go ahead and share my screen. All right. Our first topic comes from YouTube. It's a YouTube video, and it is Russian supersonic missile destroys ships in Caspian Sea during drills. I think it was a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, there was a Russian submarine that shot off, I think, 5 missiles from their ship, and to show a display on how powerful they are. Now this one, I like that right there, the rocket. This one, they're showing off their military might by destroying a ship in the middle of the Caspian Sea, putting it on YouTube and so forth, just to show the world, mainly obviously the U.S. and the surrounding Western European countries, that their military, this being the Navy, this is all my opinion, is not lacking at all. So, Mike, what about this video? Am I close to the target on this, on my assessment about this video?
So it's a supersonic cruise missile,
Mm-hmm.
and they're displaying what the its capabilities are from a fighter jet. So the ability for a fighter jet to carry a cruise missile makes it even more capable from a delivery standpoint. So if you look at the video and you look at how fast the missile takes off, you have to keep in mind that fighter jet is probably doing anywhere between 900 to 1,000 miles an hour, and it takes off from that fighter jet like the fighter jet is standing still.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that rocket, that supersonic rocket, is probably going anywhere between 4 to 5,000 miles an hour.
You can't escape that.
And its impact is enough to take down one ship, right? So if you have one cruise missile like that at supersonic speeds taking down a frigate, if you're in that vicinity, then you can forget about trying to get out of the way, because a ship doesn't move that fast and it only has so many turrets anyways.
Right. And also, no, the frigate right there, it tore off the whole front, of the ship. Now, something else. I know a lot of people looking at the playback will say, "Well, why don't you just jump off the ship?" The problem with that is, yeah, you can jump off the ship and swim as deep as you can to escape the explosion, but the shock waves that's going to come from that may knock you out.
Mm-hmm.
So that not only does it going to destroy the ship and whoever else is below that can't get topside to escape, but the ones that jump overboard without a life preserver, that the debris may knock you out if it falls on you because you got a life preserver on, or if you strong enough to swim as deep as you can with a life preserver on, the shockwave may knock you out.
You have to also keep in mind that trying to take down a missile with a an anti-ballistic missile, it's not as easy as people think. It's like trying to shoot a bullet to hit another bullet in midair, and it's just not that easy.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you have a missile like that moving at that kind of speed, at supersonic speeds, it just makes it 10 times more difficult. And you factor in that Russian Sukhoi jet that's in the video is capable of carrying at least 4 of them.
Right. The countermeasures, the ship will shoot off, the small little deterrents that it'll shoot off. It may shoot off a couple of hundred, like a machine gun. You hear You hear it go is countermeasures.
I mean, the
Those
close-in weapon system.
right. Those are I don't think that's they're not shooting exactly at the target. They're shooting in the vicinity where the target is going to come. And I'm just telling people that may look at the playback of this. Those are basically shooting in the dark. You know, shooting a target in the dark.
Hmm.
That's what those are. So when it comes, the direction it comes, you hope and pray it hits one of those and explodes in midair. But then, like you said, it got four of them. So what are the chances of hitting all four?
Right, and it's not just coming from the air, but it's skimming across the water. If you actually look at the video, it hits the impact is actually very low to the bow itself,
Mm, I did not notice that.
and the impact is so hard, it pushes the ship over just a little bit. It tilts it.
That's a
That-
hard impact.
yeah, and it sinks it too. So if you just looking at that video right now, it's actually sinking it. So
If it's that strong to hit a ship that size tilted over on its side, that is a powerful impact because them ships are not small by no means.
no, they're about 500 tons. At best, they're probably about 500 tons.
I seen I seen these ship close up. When you say it tilts it over, my God, like I can just imagine the explosion. Nah, this thing gonna knock you out. If you try to jump overboard, the force is gonna knock you unconscious. If it can, yeah, you going night night.
If that missile's coming, you have no idea it's coming.
Mm-mm.
It's moving at, let's say, 4,000 miles an hour. You only have so much time to prepare your countermeasures, anyways. So by the time your radar your radar detection system actually picks it up, it's too late.
Yeah, you better pray you up top side to get a fighting chance, and yeah, because like you said, especially if the plane is going close to uh
Mach
uh
one.
where Mach 1 about to break the sound barrier, and then it launches it.
Hmm.
Yeah, you that's Mach 2. So
It's got to be.
it's going twice the speed of sound.
Hmm.
So you're not going to hear it coming at all because it's going twice the speed of sound. And like you said, the radar, sitting there at the sonar techs, sitting there at the screen looking at the radar show up and something pop up on the screen. It's moving. Yeah, nah. You SOL with this one. Whew, I agree with you on that one.
Hey, what's going on, Bream?
What's going on, Dream?
Hey, what's up? What's up?
All right. Since our next article, this is from Reuters.com, dated July 27th, written by Yara Buyumbi and Jonathan Landay and Warren Strobel. Title: Trump seeks to revive Arab NATO to confront Iran. Washington. The Trump administration is quietly pushing ahead with the bids to create a new security and political alliance with 6 Gulf Arab states, Egypt and Jordan, in part to counter Iran's expansion in the region, according to U.S. and Arab officials. The White House wants to see deeper cooperation between the countries on missile defense, military training, counterterrorism, and other issues such as strengthening regional economic and diplomatic ties, 4 sources said. The plan is the plan to forge what officials in the White House and Middle East have called an Arab NATO of Sunni Muslim allies will likely raise tensions between the United States and Shiite Iran, 2 countries increasingly at odds since President Donald Trump took office. The administration's hope is that the effort, tentatively known as the Middle East Strategic Alliance, or MESA, might be discussed at a summit provisionally scheduled for Washington on October 12th to 13th, several sources said. The White House confirmed it was working on the concept of the alliance with our regional partners now and have been for several months. Saudi officials raised the idea of a security pact ahead of a Trump visit last year in Saudi Arabia, where he announced a massive arms deal, but the alliance proposal did not get off the ground, a U.S. source said. Sources from some of the Arab countries involved also said they were aware of renewed efforts to activate the plan. Officials from the potential participants did not respond to requests for comment. Mesa will serve as a bulwark against Iranian aggression, terrorism, extremism, and will bring stability to the Middle East, a spokesperson for the White House's National Security Council said. The spokesperson declined to confirm that Trump would host a summit on those dates, and sources cautioned that it remains uncertain whether the security plan will be finalized by mid-October. KSA sales pending. Okay. Similar initiatives by previous U.S. administrations to develop a more formal alliance with Gulf and Arab allies have failed in the past. Washington, Riyadh, and Abu Dhabi accused Iran of destabilizing the region, fomenting unrest in some Arab countries through proxy groups, and increasingly threatening Israel. The alliance will put emphasis on Gulf heavyweights, Saudi Arabia and the United States, United Arab Emirates, working together closer with the Trump administration on confronting Iran. It is unclear how the alliance could it is unclear how the alliance could immediately counter Tehran, but the Trump administration and its Sunni Muslim allies have joint interests in the conflicts in Yemen and Syria, as well as defending Gulf shipping lanes through which much of the world's oil supplies are shipped. A senior Iranian official told Reuters that under the pretext of security stability in the Middle East, Americans and their regional allies are fomenting tensions in the region. He said the approach will have no result beyond deepening the gaps between Iran, its regional allies, and the U.S.-backed Arab countries. Potentially, a big obstacle in the planned alliance is a 13-month-old rift pitting Saudi Arabia and the UAE against Qatar, home to the largest U.S. air base in the region. Other Arab nations have accused Qatar of supporting terrorism, which it denies. While one source said the administration is concerned the quarrel could be an obstacle to the initiative, he and an Arab official both said Riyadh and Abu Dhabi had assured Washington the rift would not pose a problem to the alliance. The NSC spokesperson denied the rift was a hurdle. As Trump pursued his America First policy, the White House is eager to have U.S. allies worldwide shoulder more of the burden of confronting regional security threats. The UAE is ready to deploy more troops across the Middle East to counter its foes, as it believes it can no longer rely on Western allies like the United States and Britain, UAE Minister Anwar Gargash said on Thursday. Setting up a regional anti-missile defense shield, which the United States and Gulf countries have discussed for years without result, will be a goal for the alliance, a source familiar with the plan said, as well as training to upgrade the country's militaries. Tension with Iran has increased since Trump announced in May that the United States was pulling out of a 2015 international deal to limit Tehran's nuclear ambitions. On Monday, Iran dismissed a warning from Trump that it risked dire consequences, the likes of which few throughout history have suffered before, if it made threats against the United States. All right, so Trump seeks to revive Arab NATO to confront Iran. Could, if this plan goes through, and like the article said, in past years, the plan was brought forth, but it did not go through, obviously. But if it goes through, can this spell more fighting or a uptick in fighting in the Middle East, namely around Iran area?
Yes.
Mm.
What's coincidence that today they actually found terrorists and terrorist weapons, a terrorist cell with weapons in northern Iran, looking to take on the Iranian government. So, and that's just what they posted today. So it sounds like um, the United States has ambitions to about going after Iran um, before Trump leaves office this term or next term.
Next term.
If he's to win the second term,
okay,
they'll use that as a way to,
keep him in office.
Well, not so much keep him in office, but to keep to Israel's ambitions for the Middle East, the greater Middle East.
Okay, so you got Saudi Arabia. You got what you said? Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates,
Egypt.
Okay, Egypt, Jordan. Didn't say 5, right?
6.
Sorry, 6. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Jordan 4. Obviously not Yemen. No.
The rumor is that Kuwait and Bahrain would join, but there's no guarantee that that's going to work.
I don't see Kuwait because no, and the reason I say that is strictly geographically, because their proximity to Iran is so close, and them being so much of a smaller country, they're going to bear the brunt of the force between the war between the Arab NATO and Iran.
And that's the whole purpose of it.
Having Kuwait join,
because they would get dragged into the war whether they're involved or not.
Oh, so they will have no choice but to.
You can't close off your borders in your ports. In the way that a landlocked country could, like Armenia. Armenia kind of close off its borders and just call it a day. But if you're Kuwait, you really don't have that capability. So you're just going to get dragged into the war anyway. So I guess that's why they're saying, well, we'll pull all those countries in, and that will just, that will solidify our position. But nobody really wants to go to war because Iran is a very strong, military strong country. They're a force to be reckoned with. I think it's like 80 million people live inside Iran.
Mm-hmm. And I remember you saying it's hard to fight a war in Iran because of the mountainous regions.
Yeah, the mountainous terrain. The mountainous terrain makes it hard for your tanks to get up and down the path. So unless you're going in just straight bombing from the air, even if you did do that, even if you tried to do that, then what would happen is that all their surface-to-air missiles would take you out.
Mm-hmm.
It's too costly.
So the war. Oh, so even if this were to jump off, Kuwait would seriously be dragged into it because the fighting would be near the coastlines, and Kuwait is right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what about Iraq? How will Iraq play in this? What's the word I'm looking for? In this quote unquote
alliance.
Yeah, alliance or war.
Well, the alliance would have to come before the war, but Iraq would not actually want to get involved. You have to remember that a good portion of Iraqis are actually Shiite. So Iran is a Shiite country himself. So there'll be opposition to actually getting involved in a conflict like that. And you don't want to go to war in a country when your country is divided on ethnic or religious lines.
So Iraq would adamantly try to stay and adamantly not get pulled into that conflict.
I don't think Iraq is a part of that whole entire alliance. I think, at least according to the article, I don't see Iraq's name in there.
Okay. Cause I'm looking at the map and I see Kuwait, and I'm saying, wait a minute, Kuwait is small. They would get absolutely destroyed if they weren't into it. Then, by remembering the Iran's mountainous regions, that will have to be fought by the coastline. So I see. I'm starting to put things together. What's the word? Every time I turn this mic on, I lose my vocabulary. I'm starting to see it coming from a common sense standpoint.
Keep in mind that just because a country is small doesn't mean it can't fight. Israel fought off 5 militaries all at once, and it was smaller than what it is now.
Okay.
Cream, you got something to say?
Yeah, and I think I don't think Iran is stupid. I think Iran, and this is not just from coming from a position of arrogance, but I don't think they want any parts of a war. I mean, they're pretty modern, type of civilization people, whatever, especially in the Tehran and the places like that. And once they step a foot, put their pinky toe into a war, I mean, all bets are off. I mean, they're going to go back into the Stone Age, and I think somebody even said that before. That's ironic. That just came to mind. But they'll get bombed back into the Stone Age, and all those divisive, religions and cultures there. I mean, all that stuff is just going to come to the top, man. So, they've got a lot on the line. Even if they're able to fend off, something, and they're big and they're bad, I think just the prospect of it being a war, being a destabilization element in that country is not really worth it. So they're going to have to find a way, and they will to to be easy, and make sure everybody gets along. If they're smart, they don't want any parts of a war. And again, it's not from a standpoint of losing. I mean, just at minimum, just the destabilization effect it will have in that country. It's not worth it.
Are you saying Iran or Iraq?
Iran.
Iran has the strongest military in the region.
Yeah. Again, I'm not talking about win or lose. I'm just talking about the whole destabilization effect that it will have on that country. It wouldn't be smart for them. It wouldn't be smart for them to go ahead and get into a war.
You mean the country that they will actually go after?
No, I'm talking about them. I'm talking about Iran. I mean, if they go against, I'm thinking. This is something between Iran and the U.S. or the U.S. and the coalition. I mean, either way, the U.S. Let's say if the U.S. gets involved, Iran is gonna go back a couple of centuries. It's not gonna be the same country that it is now. It won't be. I mean, of course, no country will be, in war. But I mean, if you look at a country like Afghanistan, they weren't really like modernized. So for them, they could, run around and throw rockets on their shoulders and run into tunnels and run into caves and run into mountains and do this and do that. But, you look at a country like Iran, they're pretty modern, they're hip, they have tourist stuff going on. They don't want to put all that stuff on the table, at the risk of war. I'm talking about a real war. For them, it's not worth it. It wouldn't be worth it. Even if they're able to hold someone back, I just think it's going to destabilize so much stuff over there that it wouldn't be worth it for them. They can try.
Let me push back against some of the stuff that you're saying. Mm-hmm. The idea of anybody going to war with Iran, especially from the West, would be cataclysmic. It would pull China, Russia, Pakistan, Malaysia, and Indonesia. All of those countries would come to the defense of Iran before the United States can even get their troops on the ground in there. It's just not going to happen. That's why they haven't attacked Iran yet. And when they did have a conflict with Iran after the 1979 revolution, the first thing they did is they ran and got the Iraqi government under Saddam to actually attack Iran. And that didn't turn out too well for Saddam either, which is why they had to call it quits in 1988, 1989. They had pretty much lost the war, and it made it easy for the United States under Bush to go in and perform Operation Desert Storm. So what I'm saying is that Iran is the strongest military in the region, and they know it, because if you attack Iran, they will shut down the Straits of Hormuz, which is where all the oil and merchant ships come through to pass into the Persian Gulf, as well as the Indian Ocean. And then you factor in where their satellites are. Satellites in Lebanon, satellites in Syria. Syria and Iran have a military to military agreement, that in case one of them is attacked, they will come to the defense of either one. And then you factor in Yemen. Yemen is a stronghold for Iran. Oman is a stronghold for Iran. And then you factor in some parts of Saudi Arabia in the west. They have a strong contingency of Shiite Muslims inside Saudi Arabia. And then you go to the north and you look at Iraq. Iraq, it has a very strong hold right now of like almost 2/3 of the of their 100,000 brigade, not 100,000 brigade, but 100,000 military right now is made up of Shiite Muslims that are basically Iranians. And then you factor in Afghanistan. Afghanistan has a lot of Shiite Muslims that are sitting inside Afghanistan. So what I'm saying is the region is surrounded by Iranian satellites that are capable of forging a counterattack asymmetrically against any sort of foreign aggression. So that's why they need this Arab NATO comprising of Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and these other Muslim states or Islamic states to counter Iran, because their capabilities are so vast that the idea of taking on Iran by yourself would be cataclysmic. You know, not to say that the Americans would lose immediately, but the Americans aren't going to walk away unscathed. You know, Iran is not Iraq. You can't just walk into Iran and beat them like you did the Iraqis back in 2003. They have much greater capabilities of reaching all U.S. military bases in the region, all Saudi Arabian facilities in the region as well. You know, they have the capabilities of taking out all of Saudi Arabia's warships. We saw last week, and we haven't posted it here yet, but last week the Iranians took out a Saudi Arabian oil ship as retaliation for threatening Iran with the JCPOA. So there's tensions right now that could lead to some escalations, but Iran won't lose, because they'll pull in Russia, and they'll pull in China, and they'll pull in Pakistan, as well as the rest of the Eurasian states like Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan.
Yeah, I mean, all those things. I mean, that may be, you know, the threat, but you can't let that deter you. I mean, if they end up being a problem, I mean, if they are a problem, end up being a problem that has to be addressed, then you just go ahead and, you know, you just have to address the problems and let the chips fall where they may. I mean, because if they are all that in a bag of chips today, they're gonna be all that in a bag of chips in a super Slurpee tomorrow, you know, and later on down the line, and if they're still gonna be acting off the chain and they're still gonna be getting buck wild, you know, you might as well just go ahead and just deal with them now, you know. So again, smarter heads will absolutely prevail. I hope they do, and they should. And I'm not saying, you know, Iran is some, you know, Stone Age country like Afghanistan. I know they're a threat, and I've heard all the, you know, things about them. You know, they have this capability and that capability, and although those things are very true, but at a certain point in time, if they have to be dealt with, they just have to be dealt with. You know, and you know, hopefully they don't have to be, and it won't come to that. It shouldn't come to that. But if they do have to get dealt with, then they're just going to get dealt with.
Keep in mind that Iran has nuclear weapons. We don't know how many, but they have something, even if it's just one. One is enough to take out the whole entire region. So I wouldn't put, you know, the chips on the idea that, at least I wouldn't put my chips on the idea that, you know, going into Iran to take them out would actually be beneficial for anybody, not even the United States. The United States doesn't really gain anything. If anybody gains anything from it, it would be Saudi Arabia and Israel. The United States doesn't gain anything from that. You know, if anything, right now, that's going to push Iran into the hands of Russia and into the hands of China. So,
yeah, You know, and you know, dealing with them may not be all out, may not, you know, be necessarily war, but you know, if they have to get dealt with, they just have to get dealt with. I mean, something's going to have to happen. I mean, if they're a problem, they have to get dealt with. You know, they have sanctions, they have other ways or whatever. It may not be war, it may be war, it may not be a strike, it may be a strike, but they have to get dealt with. You know, you can't let, you know, the threat of their capabilities deter you if it's, you know, if it's not, if the long term of just being passive abide is gonna outweigh, you know, the possibilities of just, you know, dealing with the problem head on right now. That's what that I mean, that's my approach, and I believe, and I'm pretty sure that's Trump's approach as well. So I mean, either way, you know, it'll be fixed. It'll be fixed. It'll be fixed, and everybody will be happy, God willing.
All right. Let's get on to our next topic. This one comes from Inquirer.net. This one is dated July 29th, written by Francis Moxosing, and titled, China Donates Patrol Boat to Philippine Navy. The Chinese government has donated 4 patrol boats to the Philippine Navy, and Manila seeks closer ties with Beijing despite a sea dispute. The Philippine Navy, through the AFP, or Armed Forces of the Philippines, General Headquarters, has accepted the donation from the PRC, People's Republic of China, 4 patrol boats. Navy spokesperson, Commander Jonathan Zada said Sunday. The donation came with 30 units of rocket-propelled grenade launchers, 40 millimeter, with corresponding ammunition. Zeta said they are assessing how the new boats can be integrated into the organization and supported in the long term in terms of logistics. We have assigned personnel to train on its operation and maintenance, he said. Other details of the patrol boats were not immediately available. In late 2016, China has offered military assistance of $14 million worth of small arms and fast boats to the Philippines for free. Photos of the blue patrol boats being transported along Rojas Boulevard in Manila circulated on social media last Friday. China has also previously donated thousands of rifles and ammunition to the Philippine police and military as it battled Islamic State-linked terrorists in Marawi City. President Rodrigo Duterte chose to seek warmer ties with China after a sour territorial dispute in the West Philippine Sea during the previous administration. He pursued an independent foreign policy and sought closer ties with China as it distanced itself from the U.S. Despite the friendly relationship between the two countries, China continues to assert indisputable sovereignty over the South China Sea with its 9-dash line claim. It was invalidated by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague in 2016, but China has refused to acknowledge the ruling. All right. While I'm reading this, I can only think I looked at a video of China and Africa and the loans China was giving to different African countries, building African infrastructure. And the person doing the documentary said that China knows a lot of those loans will not be paid back. And some of those loans has a high possibility of being delinquent. The person was saying it's not about the loans being paid back. It's about giving favors to African countries in response to China products being sold in Africa and resources, natural resources being bought by China. I say that to say I think China's giving Philippines these resources to have the Philippines to buy brownie points with the Philippines. So if something comes up, such as the South China Sea and a dispute, a territorial dispute, when America comes in with the Navy and or world government saying, hey, you have no right of building these man-made islands in the South China Sea, then the Philippines or other countries in that region will side with China because China is giving them these resources. That's my opinion on it.
The article doesn't mention this, but you have to keep in mind that, or it should be kept in mind that China is also building up hospitals inside the Philippines as well as highways. So there's infrastructure that's being donated to the Philippines from China as well. I think what's happening now is that the Philippines is getting exactly what it needs rather than what the United States wants, right? So the United States has been giving them these Vietnam era landing boats. I forget exactly what the name is of that particular tank, but it's basically it's a floatable tank that can basically invade a beachhead, and Vietnam does, I mean not Vietnam, Philippines doesn't need it doesn't need military weapons in that capacity. It needs infrastructure. And China has been graciously providing the Philippines with hospitals and new universities, new highways, new electrical infrastructure. Russia, has donated all types of vehicles, possibilities of a nuclear power reactor going into the Philippines. I watched an interview with Duterte, which is the president of the Philippines, where he made an agreement, well, not an agreement, but an announcement in front of the Chinese president, basically saying, I announced my disassociation or divorce from the United States, and there's a round of applause, in the audience. So it sounds to me like the Philippines have been pulled into the Russian Chinese spirit influence, and it's almost game over at this point.
Because looking at that map, the man-made islands China been building up, and that 9 dash line that the article was talking about is right. If people looking at this can see my cursor, is right in this area, and the main countries in that area is China, Philippines, and Vietnam. So now that Philippines has been pulled into, like you said, the Russian China sphere's influence, only country that's left is Vietnam, unless you have any other information that China has been interacting with Vietnam on the same level that they've been interacting with the Philippines.
They have not. So China and Vietnam typically don't actually see eye to eye. But the Vietnamese have been talking with the Russians on some agreements on opening up new ports and things of that nature. I know the Americans under Obama had visited Vietnam to actually offer any what do you call that, restitution or reparations for the Vietnamese War as a way to offset China in the South China Sea. So
okay, now has Trump been over to Vietnam to try to curtail China's influence in the South China Sea?
to my knowledge, no. But Vietnam is a pretty strong country, socially and militarily speaking.
So we should, in the coming future, we should see either China, Russia. You say Russia, man, already been talking to Vietnam, but China and the U.S. In talks with Vietnam about something.
As a way to counter China, in terms of the Spratly Islands, but that I don't see Vietnam getting involved because it's not really beneficial to them at this point.
Okay, it's because the Spratly Islands is nearer to Philippines than it is to Vietnam.
There's more islands there's more islands. If you zoom in on the map a little bit more, there's more islands that are being occupied by China that are debatably in Vietnamese territory. So,
okay, I see it. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the Spratly Islands. To your right on the screen is the Philippines. Up here, you see Ho Chi Minh City. That's Vietnam. Okay, I see Brunei. Okay, these are the Spratly Islands, the many dotted islands on the map. All right, so it seems like the bulk of the islands are nearer to the Philippines, but you do have some islands in between Vietnam and Brunei.
What's that little strip right there? Kind of looks like, I know it's not Panama, but it starts with a P to the right. Yeah, right there.
Puerto Princesa.
What's that? Where is it?
I think, doesn't that belong to
that's the Philippines.
Yeah, Philippines. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Philippines were occupied by Spain, so that's why it looks similar to something Spanish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So all these dotted islands that have no name to it, those are the Spratly Islands. So it commonsensically, I know that's not a word, China would be favorable to the Philippines to keep what they're doing, building up these man-made islands in the South China Sea. Any other points on this one?
Oh, good.
All right. Let's get to our next article. This one's from Business Insider, written 18 hours ago by Ryan Pickrell. Title: Leave immediately or you will pay. China is threatening foreign ships and planes, but the U.S. military isn't changing a thing. Gangster, gangster. All right, article goes. The U.S. Navy and regional allies have reportedly noticed an increase in Chinese radio queries to foreign ships and planes operating in the South China Sea. Some said to be less than friendly and others actually threatening. Leave immediately. Chinese forces in the disputed Spratly Islands warned earlier this year when the Philippine military aircraft flew close to a Chinese outpost. The Associated Press reported Tuesday, citing a new Philippine government report. Philippine military aircraft, I am warning you again, leave immediately or you will pay the possible consequences. The report said that Chinese forces threatened soon after, according to the AP. In the latter half of the year, Philippine military aircraft patrolling near contested territories received at least 46 Chinese radio warnings, the government report says, according to the AP. While these warnings have traditionally been delivered by Chinese coast military units, they are now thought to be broadcast by personnel stationed at military outposts in the South China Sea, the news agency reported. Let me read that again. While these warnings have traditionally been delivered by Chinese Coast Guard units, they are now thought to be broadcast by personnel stationed at military outposts in the South China Sea, the news agency reported. Our ships and aircraft have observed an increase in radio queries that appear to originate from new land-based facilities in the South China Sea, Commander Clay Doss, a representative for the 7th Fleet, told the AP. These communications do not affect our operations, he added, noting that when communications with foreign militaries are unprofessional, those issues are addressed by appropriate diplomatic and military channels. The Philippine military tends to carry on with its activities. They do that because of their claim to that area, and we have a standard response and proceed with what we're doing. Philippine Air Force Chief Lieutenant General Galileo Gerard Rico Quintanar Jr. Told the AP. Though an international Though an international arbitration tribunal sought to discredit China's claim to the South Sea 2 years ago, though an international arbitration tribunal sought to discredit China's claim to the South Sea years ago, China has continued to strengthen its position in the Flashpoint region. In recent months, China has deployed various defense systems, such as jamming technology, surface-to-air missiles, anti-ship ballistic missiles, and even heavy bombers to the South China Sea, leading U.S. Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis last month to accuse China of intimidating and coercion in the waterway. Beijing, however, argues that it has a right to defend its sovereign territory, especially considering the increased frequency of U.S. Navy freedom of navigation operations in the area. It has conducted more than half a dozen since the start of the Trump administration. Despite Chinese warnings and objections, the U.S. military has repeatedly made clear that it will maintain an active military presence in the South China Sea. International law allows us to operate here, allows us to fly here, allows us to train here, allows us to sail here, and that's what we're doing. And we're going to continue to do that. Lieutenant Commander Tim Hawkins told the AP in February. I question who wrote the international law. The U.S. military has also expressed confidence in its ability. The U.S. military also expressed confidence in its ability to deal with China's military outposts in the region should the situation escalate. The United States military has had a lot of experience in the Western Pacific taking down small islands. Lieutenant General Kenneth McKenzie, the director of the Joint Staff, told reporters in May, adding, "It's just a fact." The U.S. earlier this year disinvited China's People's Liberation Army, or PLA, Navy from participating in this year's iteration of the multilateral RAM of the Pacific Maritime Exercises, citing what it characterized as alarming Chinese activities in the South China Sea. The Philippines has at least twice raised the issue of radio warnings with Beijing. The AP reported Thursday. All right. China is standing its ground, and the U.S. saying we have a right to be here. That's so. Mike, lead us on.
Yeah, well, this is where it all begins. We just looked at a article, I think, about the Philippines receiving patrol boats and things like that. I would think that those patrol boats are going to be used as a way to crowd out the sea. At least some of the Spratly Islands, outside of Spratly Islands, to check any other ships coming in. So those ships could be either U.S. based or NATO based. At some point, they're gonna bump heads because they're gonna finish those artificial reefs into islands, and then they're gonna militarize those islands or those reefs. And then what you're gonna start to see now is the United States or French or any other NATO powers violating the sea lanes or the airspace of China, and they're going to start pushing back all the way right out of that territory that they originally have been in. So they can claim international waters all they want to, but you're going to be confined to like to a far distance from where China actually sits at, which gives China all the security that they need to operate the way they want.
Because I'm going to zoom back in. When I look at this Spratly Islands, I think you're talking about this small sliver between the outermost northwestmost part of the Spratly Islands and Vietnam. So I'm thinking you're talking about this small piece of strip where it's considered international waters that they can sail through without coming close to the China-owned Spratly Islands and Vietnam waters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wonder if they're going to violate that. If it gets to that level, I wonder if they're going to violate that. I'm going to say yes, but I can be wrong.
Well, if the United States thinks that they can, what's the cost of actually wanting to go to war with China over some stupid islands? Right? What's the point? What do you really gain from that?
Nothing.
I just don't see the value of it. So
Well,
I could see Trump deciding to play his cards and not play his cards and retreat back and not get into that sort of confrontation with China because what's the game?
well, we see logically here on a Black think tank. We logically see there's nothing to gain over some man-made islands in the middle of the South China Sea to go to war over China for. But other people may not think that way.
Right.
Got anything to add on this, Praying?
Oh no, I'm learning. But I will say this, not specifically to this issue, but one of the things that I notice and see Trump doing is that he gets like more pieces on his side of the table, like some of the deals that he unwinds or gets out of or wants to renegotiate or take another look at or say we're not renewing this or signing this. He kind of gets out of those deals or those arrangements or those agreements to kind of give him leverage and to kind of give him some things that he can kind of play with, so that in the event that that he has to address someone, he doesn't have to go head on with them. He can kind of play this card over here or that card over there. And I just see him, like a lot of things that he unwinds is just, his way of getting more cards into his hand and then having a much better hand to go ahead and play with. So, if some shit happens to where, it could, end up being a bad situation, he doesn't have to go address it head on. He could be like, okay, if you want to act a fool here, then we're just going to go ahead and, that thing over here, we're going to go ahead and come out of that, or you aren't going to get this anymore, or we're going to go ahead and start doing that. It could be like, hey, you can't do that. So I guess we can. Well, if you don't want to start doing this, then, fall back over here a little bit or ease up over here a little bit. So, but when you don't have that many cards in your hand, then you have to address certain things like that, like head on. That's at least my theory.
Any rebuttals? Not once? Twice? All right. Let's get to our next point, our next article. This one comes from ourmonitor.com, written July 17th, written by Brian Harris. Title: Congress calls on Trump to recognize Israeli sovereignty over Golan. Oh, this is going to be some stuff. Okay. The article goes, goodness, it's small. The article goes, there we go. I apologize, people need that. All right, article goes, President Donald Trump handed Israel a significant win when he recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital and relocated the embassy there. Now Republican lawmakers from his own party are putting the pressure on the administration to recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Israel captured the territory from Syria during the Six-Day War in 1967 and formally annexed it in 1981. It will recognize the reality that the Golan Heights is part of Israel and is vital to its national security, said Representative Ron DeSantis, Republican from Florida, during the hearing of the House Oversight Panel on National Security he conveyed today to muster support for the move. This is a policy that the president should implement and all members of Congress should support. The move comes as Israel is raising concerns about international moves to return the Golan Heights to Syria, as Bashar al-Assad's foes gradually acknowledge that he is unlikely to be driven from power. What has changed today is that with the imminent victory of the forces of President Bashar al-Assad in the sector of South Syria, new diplomatic initiatives by outside actors cannot be ruled out. Dor Gold, a former director general of Israel's Foreign Affairs Ministry and ambassador to the UN, who now heads the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, wrote in his written testimony to the subcommittee. U.S. recognition of Israel sovereignty over the Golan Heights would constitute the fulfillment of a series of previous diplomatic assurances given to Israel by past administrations. The U.S. recognition of Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights would have little immediate impact on the ground, but some legal scholars and democratic critics believe that recognizing the annexation will set a precedent for Israel to do the same in the West Bank. You cannot convert occupied territory and incorporate it into your national territory through occupation, said Jeffrey Korn, an international law professor at the South Texas College of Law, Houston, and a former Army officer. There has to be some peace agreement with settlement, Korn added. There's increasing momentum on the right in Israel to just give up on the two-state solution, annex the West Bank, and allow the areas that are currently under Palestinian quasi-sovereignty to continue to function that way, added Korn. If that's your ultimate goal in the West Bank, once the United States recognizes what you've done in the Golan Heights, it contributes to that momentum. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asked Trump to recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights last year after former U.S. President Barack Obama rebuffed his request in 2015. In recent months, the Israeli government has redoubled its efforts. Israeli Intelligence Minister Yisrael Katz noted in May that the Golan Heights is currently topping the agenda with the United States. When asked if Trump is open to recognizing the occupied territory as part of Israel proper, a White House spokesperson simply said, "There has been no change in our position on the Golan Heights." The Israeli embassy did not respond to Al Monitor's request for comment. At some point, there's nothing left to negotiate from the Israeli point of view, and I don't know if that's good for the Palestinians or the Israelis, and I don't think it's good for U.S. interests either. Republican Jerry Connolly, Democrat from Virginia, a Houston Foreign Affairs Committee member, told Al Monitor, "I think it's just another death blow to the peace process." However, Connolly also warned against returning the Golan Heights to Syria. The annexed territory serves as invaluable strategic high ground a mere 40 miles from Damascus. As forces loyal to the Bashar al-Assad regime swept up the remnants of the southwest Syrian opposition, the Golan Heights' geostrategic importance has become even more prominent. The presence of Iranian-backed militias, including Hezbollah, fighting alongside regime forces, has stoked fears of a direct confrontation with Israel. Just think how crazy it would be to say that Israel should give the Golan to Assad or more of his proxies, DeSantis said at Tuesday's hearings. It would be absolute madness. But in 2010, before the outbreak of war in Syria, Israel contemplated doing exactly that. Netanyahu and Assad entered secret negotiations over the territory, and the Israelis were reportedly prepared to return the Golan Heights to Syria if Damascus ended its ties with Iran and Hezbollah. No political party in Israel could ever do it, said Korn. The Israeli population on the northern border suffered tremendously when Syria hit the Golan Heights. Korn noted that Netanyahu's renewed determination to secure U.S. support for the Israeli annexation proves that the Prime Minister has abandoned the idea of abandoning the heights. It reinforces Israel's position that this is not an issue that is ever going to be on the negotiating table, he said. Despite the political implications, Trump's decision is unlikely to significantly change the situation on the ground one way or other. Realistically, I don't see how it changes much in terms of the status quo. A House aide told Al Monitor, Israel will just give more criticism from the international will just get more criticism from the international community at the UN and stuff like that because it is still the disputed territory. But I would think it dang, how is he talking? But I would think it would just be more of the same we saw with the US embassy move. All right. Just looking at the Golan Heights, go to our trusty map here. Okay. The article was saying, from my understanding, if the U.S. recognizes, scroll in here, some more here. If the U.S. recognizes Israel's right to the Golan Heights, then they would then turn around, or annexation of the Golan Heights, they would then turn around and annex the Gaza Strip, which is mainly where Palestinians live at, which would effectively increase the size of Israel. And the person on the article that commented on the article, they were saying that U.S. can't just recognize Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights because of the ripple effect that will have in terms of the Palestinians in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip, and possibly also on the West Bank. And I don't know what else I'm missing, but any comments on this one?
Well, part of this issue is that legally they cannot maintain the territory and have it recognized. So if you look on Google Maps and you kind of zoom in, this Golan Heights actually it's not registered as a Israeli piece of territory. It's actually registered as a Syrian territory, internationally speaking. So this is part of the reason why Israel has such a hard time getting full support, because of the occupations that they have. You know, the occupation of South Lebanon, the occupation of Golan Heights, the occupation of the West Bank, the occupation of Gaza as well. To be a recognized state, you know, you have to have defined borders, and their borders change every single week. For the last 70 years, it has changed every single week. So looking at prior maps that show the original state of Israel, it was mostly Palestine, and then over time they gobbled up a lot of the territory. Them sacrificing the Golan Heights, you know, giving it back to Syria, in order to cut ties with Lebanon and Iran, it's just not going to happen. You know, you can't take something from somebody and then say, well, I'll give it back to you if you give me a few bucks. Like that, it's not how it works. You're trying to bully them. And no Arab in the region would ever recognize that and support Syria on that domestically either. The problem with Syria in this regard, which is what really irks me, is that in 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, they took the Golan Heights back from Israel. They actually drove the Israelis out with 2,000 tanks. And instead of just occupying the territory, they went all the way into Israel, which is what they were not supposed to do. They should have just stayed in the Golan Heights and just maintained it with their tanks. Arab leaders being incompetent at the time, and I think overall they're pretty incompetent, just my opinion. They decided to take more territory than what they can actually hold, and the Jews came back and took it back from them. So now you're fighting over territory that you could have maintained had you called a ceasefire, but you just didn't do it. So this is partly the fault of the Syrians, and it's partly the fault of the Egyptians as well. That if they did it the right way, they wouldn't have this problem to begin with.
I see what you're saying. They got too greedy. Any other comments on this? I will say, what's going on? How you doing, Noah?
I'm good. How are you guys?
You got any comments on this?
Yeah, I have to agree with Mike. The Arab leaders since then have been extremely incompetent. You know, how does 6 countries, or is it 7, invade Israel and then lose?
5 militaries.
what was it? 5?
5 militaries.
Oh, it was 5. Okay. And as for the peace process died a long time ago. I think, at least in my opinion, when Anwar Sadat and who was the Israeli president at the time, Menachem, I think, when they were both assassinated, I think that was the end. And then since then, the right wing of that country has slowly been gaining more and more power, and as well as the illegal settlements, as Mike was saying, that they grow every year or every week. So there's really nothing that's going to change that. I don't see a two-state solution happening.
No, it shouldn't be a two-state solution anyway. It should just be a one-state solution. And the problem with the two-state solution is that if you give something to the Palestinians, they don't have anything. All of the arable land that they would need to actually become an actual sufficient state has been gobbled up by Israel. And the problem with Israel is that if they provide a one-state solution, then they'll be outnumbered by citizenship, because there will be more Arabs and more Muslims in the population than Jews, and they can't afford to have that. So what they would have to force it to do through Israeli law, would be an apartheid state where
Well, it's already an apartheid state.
It's an apartheid state as it is right now. But if you form it as one state and give Palestinians the citizenship, then what happens is Palestinians
got some feedback.
What happens is Palestinians have democracy now too, so they have the ability to vote. Unless you take away their ability to vote, and then they can vote you out of office, and then you're really screwed. So Palestinians would be in the same position as African Americans are prior to 1965.
Right. Well, I'm just saying the whole two-state solution that they always talk about it's not even a pipe dream. It just will never happen. But in my personal opinion, it should just be a one state in Palestine. But I don't see that happening.
It should be, and I think in 100 years from now.
Oh no, it won't be that long. I don't think it will be 100 years.
I think you have a lot of feedback.
Oh, is it me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't know.
Oh, go ahead. I'll say after.
Kind of messed up my train of thought. Yeah. So the occupation of the Golan Heights obviously makes it easier. I think, as the article pointed out, that it gives Israel the high ground. However,
it's a lot of.
Yeah, Preem, can you mute yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem. Yeah. The Golan Heights gives Israel the high ground. However, it's also 40 miles from Damascus, and you can't, if you're Syrian, you can't really accept that that sort of threat being that close. It's the equivalent of the Soviet Union putting missiles inside Cuba 90 miles away from Florida. It just doesn't, if the Americans aren't sitting well with that being 90 miles away, why would the Syrians be okay with a country that keeps bombing them every week, being 40 miles away from their capital? It just doesn't make any sense.
Right. And then the way I see it is that slowly, Israel has been isolated from the rest of the world, right? With their, not only the occupation of Golan Heights, Gaza, the West Bank, but just the increasing encroachment. It's kind of like South Africa, right before the fall of apartheid. I think something like that is going to happen. Because right now, because of the BDS movement, boycott, sanction, divest, is starting to pick up steam. More and more countries are, cutting ties with Israel. So if the United States, starts fighting Iran and they get themselves in that quagmire, they won't have the finances to be able to support Israel, right? And the Europeans definitely aren't going to at this point. At least that's how I see it. But at that point, I see the Palestinians being able to take over.
Yeah. To a certain extent, right? So, I mean, they don't have the military might to actually hold that ground. So you would need some kind of external forces to actually partake in that type of adventure. But as a side note, there's an article that I wanted to post. I don't have it on me right now, but Israel wants to back the Kurds inside Syria and give them international recognition by carving out a Kurdish state inside northern Syria. The problem is Turkey is not going to be. Turkey does not accept the Kurds being in the north because they see them as a threat to Turkey itself. So the Turks invade Syria to kick out all the Kurds or what they consider to be the PKK. But Israel is giving weapons and money and logistics to the Kurds. So the Kurds will side with the Jews or the Zionists or the Israelis, while at the same time Syria is calling these Kurds traitors for siding with the enemy. Turkey sees the Kurds as traitors. Israel sees them as friends. Syria is saying, I don't like neither of you motherfuckers. And the United States is saying, well, we're gonna help back these guys, and Turkey is saying no to the United States, and Israel is saying yes to the Kurds. It's the Middle East is just a big hot mess at this point.
It's
so
a cluster.
Oh, good. I'll go after you.
So what's going on right now is that there's a possibility that Israel has been working out logistics and political operations with Syria to back up the Kurds to kick the Turks out of Syria, out the northern part of Syria. Now, what we saw this morning is that the United States government has put sanctions on 2 Turkish officials for holding an American pastor in jail. So this is the preemptive. This is the preempt before they go to war with Turkey, and they're going to use the Kurds to actually do so. And Israel is going to sponsor the whole entire thing because the Turkish president Erdogan had actually thrown out the Israeli ambassador to Turkey.
It's starting to sound like a, excuse my language, it's starting to sound like a shit show.
It has been for a very long time, I know.
How
and also the thing about the Kurds is they really, really screwed themselves when they aligned with the U.S. Because they thought the U.S. was going to continue backing them, but then the U.S. right now is pulling out. I think that's probably what Donald Trump talked to Putin about, is leaving Syria. So if they leave Syria, it's going to be kind of like how the CIA did the Hmong in during the Vietnam War. Use them to fight the Thai and the Laos, and then when they leave them, they get massacred because you were working with the enemy against us.
Right.
Okay, from Israel's point of view, I can understand why they would give resources to the Kurds in northern Syria, in this area. I want to zoom my map in so people can see on my cursor. In this area, I can see. But then on the flip side of that coin, I can't, because they're just adding not even just one law, a few more laws to the fire, because they support these people up here, then they're going to just create more enemies with obviously Syria and Turkey. So they're putting, it's almost like a, to me, it's almost like a desperate move from Israel, because if they do that, Syria and Turkey really is not going to like them, because A, you messing up stuff in my house, meaning Syria, and Turkey. With Turkey, it's like, okay, you putting a strain on our borders. I don't like this. I don't like what you're doing. That's how I see it.
Well, in Turkey's defense, Turkey has listed the PKK as a terrorist organization, Now, the United States has been working with allegedly the PKK as the Syrian Defense Forces, the SDF. Israel has been working with the Kurds to give them international recognition by carving out a state within Syria. The Syrian constitution states that they cannot create a new state, similar to how the United States has, within the constitution, you can't break apart, right? California and Texas can't secede from the rest of the United States. It's impossible because of the constitution states so. And Syrian constitution states that the Kurds can't carve out their own state. However, if the Kurds have been working with the Americans and the Jews behind the curtain, then that makes them traitors because they're citizens of Syria. So if the Kurds are going to be two-faced in this, they have to go all the way.
Right.
Because if they don't go all the way and they take their foot off the pedal and put their foot on the on the brake, then what's going to happen is Turkey's going to come in there and take them down, as well as
Syria.
The Syrian government has no choice but to go in and take them down. However, by law, because they are citizens of Syria, the Syrian government has to come to their defense against Turkey. So that puts Turkey and Syria at loggerheads.
Oh, that's a pickle right there.
It's an absolute pickle.
But do you think Syria will come to their aid?
They have.
I'm skeptical about that.
They have.
Oh, they already have?
Yeah, the Syrians
against Turkey, or just in general?
No, you have a lot of feedback. There are Syrian soldiers who made it up north, in Afrin, to back up the Kurds who are being bombed by the Turkish government. I believe, if I remember correctly, they shot down a Turkish jet already. I think it's F-16. I think. All of this going on, the Russians had already taken out their guys who were working with the Kurds to protect them from, being bombed by the Turkish government. However, because Russia had already pulled their soldiers out, the Americans left theirs in. So now what's been going on behind the scenes is that rumors are that Turkish soldiers have been killing American soldiers on the ground because they're partnered up with the Kurds. And maybe Trump worked out a deal with Putin to say, this ain't worth it for me. I'm pulling out of here. I'm taking my guys out of here, and I'm going to replace them with French troops or British troops, or I think there's now German troops inside Syria now, backing up the Kurds.
I can't
Yeah,
wait.
the Kurds put themselves in an impossible situation. It won't end well for them.
I can't wait to see how this plays out. Let's get to our next topic. Before I do that, seeing this city right here, Batman. I like that. All right, Turkey. All right, let's get to our next article. This is by Press TV, written July 30th. It was written by. Title: Erdogan invites BRICS to have a tea. I like that play on words. Article: Turkey has announced interest in joining the BRICS group of emerging economies and has called on the bloc to allow its accession. Turkish media quoted President Recep Tayyip Erdogan as saying that BRICS could benefit from expanding its list of member states, stressing that China was specifically eager to see the alliance grow larger. We are in the G20 with 5 of those countries. I wish they would take, the necessary steps to let us in, and we could take our place in BRICS, Erdogan told the Hurriyet Daily News on the sidelines of the group's recent forum in the South African city of Johannesburg. If you take us in, the name of the platform will become BRICS. He said his suggestion to allow Turkey's accession to the group had been warmly welcomed by the member states, including the BRICS had been considering, adding the BRICS had been considering adding other nations for a long time, especially China. Especially China says that it stands in favor of enlargement. I have seen that they are considering involving other countries in this platform. They are not opposed to it, Erdogan said, as quoted by the media. Turkey was invited to the 10th annual meeting of the Group of Emerging Economies, which took place on July 25th to 27th, as the term chair of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The Turkish president attended the summit together with the country's foreign minister, finance and treasury minister, defense minister, commerce minister, and the ruling Justice and Development Party. BRICS was founded in 2006 during the St. Petersburg. BRICS was founded in 2006 during the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Initially, it was formed by Brazil, Russia, India, and China, with South Africa joining the group in 2010. The current participants represent more than 40% of the world's population and 25% of global GDP. All right, so Turkey is trying to join BRICS. Any comments on this?
I think this is a very powerful move for the BRICS organization because it puts Turkey, who's the actual regional power, with a very large population and a pretty decent GDP, and the manufacturing base as well. Turkish goods are very solid. Leather, other types of other types of agricultural goods, because they ship goods to Russia. Russia is like one of their main partners in terms of agricultural goods. When the Turks actually shot down the Russian fighter jet, and Putin put sanctions on Turkey, Turkish economy actually took a mean hit because they couldn't ship their goods to Russia anymore. So now that the sanctions have been lifted, it actually puts Turkey in a very right position to be a part of the BRICS. They're very proficient at cybersecurity as well as other information technology platforms. They have a pretty strong military portfolio in terms of selling arms externally. The South Stream pipeline that comes from Russia into Turkey is actually profitable for them and could be advantageous for their entry back into Europe. BRICS, the BRICS is actually a very good place for Turkey to be.
Any other comments? Anyone else? Once.
So I've got a quick question. Turkey was doing something about 4, 6, or 7 months ago into Europe. Erdogan was saying something. There was a bunch of protests and marches, something where he was moving a lot of Turkish people into some city in Europe or something like that. Is that kind of related, unrelated, to this?
It's somewhat unrelated, but it's proportionate to Turkey's geopolitical strategies, right? So at one point, Turkey wanted to join the European Union. They still do. The problem is that they are too diametrically opposed socially and politically to the European Union and the European Union body. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them to actually join at this point. It's not really all that beneficial, but politically speaking, it would give them a lot of power inside the European Union. However, joining the BRICS puts them closer to Russia, China, and as well as South Africa, because Turkey has now become a major player inside Africa, and especially in places like Somalia, Tunisia. A lot of investments coming out of Turkey. I think something like close to $10 billion of investment going into Africa right now. So joining the BRICS just makes them a solid team player. And I think the BRICS is operating more like an all-star team, like a dream team, rather than just a political body, a political and economic body. They operate more like a dream team. You got all your major players that have a lot of resources that can be redistributed around the world. So
You're saying the BRICS is operating like a dream team.
yeah, when you think about major powers, so they make up almost 2/3 of the world's population between China and in India, and then you take in the regional players such as South Africa um, and Brazil, and then you take in Russia, who has a lot of who's technologically advanced. Even now, and then you add Turkey, and Turkey is technologically advanced as well. I would say similar to that of Russia.
Mm. I see what you're saying.
Right.
Cool. Appreciate it.
And Turkey is kind of like I guess, kind of like a merchant class of people, similar to the Nigerians. They're basically everywhere. So joining the BRICS, could give their, businessmen around the world increased, advantage. I think, for example, like they're in Poland right now. They own, I think, the second or third largest telecom company in that country. They do that a lot of other places around the world. So they have nothing to lose from joining them, for sure.
Right, and they have a whole lot to gain.
They do.
But I'm surprised Nigeria hasn't joined the BRICS, though. And that's my...
they're suspected to be joining by 2020 or something to that effect.
Yeah, because
them in Egypt.
Did we read that on here, or was it something I saw you sent? How?
Oh yeah, that's yeah.
Somebody said that they were saying they don't know why Nigeria is not part of the BRICS ahead of South Africa, since its economy is larger than either its economy or population is larger than
its GDP. Its GDP is twice that of South Africa.
Yeah,
they have the strongest GDP in the on the continent,
and the largest population on the continent as well. But did you guys get the email I sent about the region? I don't know if we talked about it. The African kind of like single market that they're trying to do, open up liberalized trades between all 54 African countries.
When did you send that?
Yeah, he sent that the other day.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and it just makes sense because a lot of the tariffs that that are happening between each state is ridiculous. It makes it impossible for them to do business.
Right. So if they are able to establish that and they have Nigeria in the BRICS, then a lot of the other 53 African countries, they can I guess get the ancillary benefits of it, maybe even become part of the BRICS Plus network.
Right, and I think the problem with that, with getting all the countries on board, I think a lot of them disagree with the tariff-free zones, and that they don't see that as I guess they see that as not being beneficial to them. But that would be this would be Africa's NAFTA, so to speak.
And Africa Free Trade Agreement, like Noah said. AFTA. Right.
Well, I think it's called AFTCA or something like that. Africa. But already they have 45 signatories. Once they add Nigeria, which is seriously considering it at the moment, they're kind of preparing their economy to try to make this happen. Then I get the other ones won't have any choice but to join.
All right. Any other comments on that before we get to our our next article? Once, twice. All right. Our next article is a YouTube video titled "Eric Holder Wants to Run for President." I'm not going to say any 2 cents on this one. I'll just open this one up because I feel like there's some good points that's going to be made on this this video here. Eric Holder.
Oh, are you opening up the floor, or are you going to talk about the video?
No, I'm opening it up.
I think Eric Holder's resume is pretty clean at this point. Considering the ties that they have with the agencies, they can pretty much close a lot of the dirty laundry that they had before with the Fast and Furious gun trafficking program that they had that went out of control. Outside of that, he really hasn't had too many bad episodes during Obama's administration. He said he's had a few gaffes, but nothing major and critical that would actually destroy his opportunities. The problem is he's not as charismatic as Obama, and what that does for him is it really hurts his ability. So he would need some form of a wingman that can actually carry, or a wing woman that can actually carry him. And maybe Kamala Harris might be that person. Maybe Bernie Sanders. Right? I doubt if Bernie Sanders would ever get selected, because he's just diametrically opposed to the corporate Democrats.
What about Eric Holder?
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
That's what we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
See, you know, you go get them chips, and you come in, and you think you can, you know, such the high level of snob in your life.
No, wait. It was literally
just come in and just talk.
Hold on. I was listening. I've been listening the whole time. I was at the park with my daughter, right? Dude, there was about a gap of about 3 or 4 minutes where I was listening on the phone. I switched from the phone, got onto the computer, and then I was listening. I was like, I wonder if they mentioned Eric Holder. And then, yeah, you guys snapped on me. It's all good.
Wait,
no, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, I think Eric Holder will make a very good vice president, but not an actual good president. Especially when you consider somebody like Deval Patrick, who's a little bit more charismatic than he is. Both of them are black, and both of them are a little bit hood. You know, and I'm saying hood and relative that they grew up very similar. But Eric Holder doesn't have that charismatic approach that Obama had, and it's hard to replicate that. So they're expecting that Obama's protege would be just as good as he is, and if he doesn't have that same swagger, you know, he's going to bomb out really early.
Deval Patrick, he was the governor of Massachusetts or the mayor of Boston?
No, he's the governor of Massachusetts. He's from my block too.
Okay. Now,
was Eric Holder the former mayor of Chicago, or am I getting mixed up?
No. Eric Holder was a attorney general.
No, I know that. I thought he was also the former mayor, or is that Rahm Emanuel?
That's Rahm Emanuel.
Okay.
No, Rahm Emanuel is still the mayor.
He's still the mayor right now.
Yeah, the former mayor was
Daley.
I don't know if you're thinking about Harold Washington. That's way back.
Oh, no, wrong guy then.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know we all look alike, but you know. Okay, but yeah, Eric Holder is like the guy in the video said, like watching paint dry. He's not like everybody's saying. He's not charismatic. He's too vanilla. He's too plain, and he doesn't have any. I want to say pizzazz, but I'll just say charisma to suck you in and make you believe what he's saying. His oratory skills are not on par or what you would want in a president.
It isn't. But that could easily change in 9 months. You know, if you go through like Toastmasters or something like that. But
Toastmasters isn't that good, Mike.
Excuse me.
I said Toastmasters is not that good.
Well, it would actually help. It would actually help Eric.
Well, you don't think Eric is? You guys don't think Eric Holder is charismatic enough?
Oh man, he's like he's like the equivalent of Alfred from like the French Prince of Bel-Air. Just not very entertaining at all. But I will say that he will make a good vice president. But I have heard rumors of LeBron James actually. Oh
no. No.
Jesus Christ.
Like mayor or something like that, but I don't know. I don't know. No, I see LeBron running for like the mayor of Cincinnati, or I don't know, even maybe the governor of Ohio, but not president.
No. I wasn't going to say that he's going to run for president, but I'm saying he's going to be on the campaign trail for the Democrats come 2020.
I absolutely believe that. I believe that. Yeah.
Yeah,
He just moved
remember, he's a billionaire. He's a billionaire now, so he has the money to toss at all this.
Well, not only that, but he's here in California too, man. So he trusts he's going to be running with this California liberal crowd, man.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But if I always get Eric Holder runs as VP, or and like Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or whoever becomes runs for president, I feel like the Democrats will lose. I think anything short of Bernie Sanders, it won't be good. Trump will clinch the 2020.
It depends. It depends on how this Mueller investigation goes.
Somebody school me really quick. I don't want to get too far off subject. I know LeBron James is a billionaire, but I don't watch or carry on sports, or definitely I don't follow him. How did he acquire that? Was this through his sneakers? Was this through his deals?
That's through Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett. Well, I was going to say, well, the thing is that the main conduit is through Warren Buffett, because he is he's an investor in Berkshire Hathaway.
Really?
Well, I wouldn't say mainly Warren Buffett. He may have taught him or told him how to invest his money, but he got his money through NBA contracts, through shoe deals, and through a lot of other endorsements. You got to understand. Well, hey, Mike, you are rubbing off on you got to keep in mind that a lot of these athletes, the bulk of their money comes from, or high value athletes, the bulk of their money comes from endorsement deals, because NBA has a salary cap, so they get a lot of their money off court.
Well, it's but with regards to his investments into Berkshire, you got to look at projected growth, right? What his sum total value is based on what his investments are in Berkshire. I'm not arguing. I'm not like making any argument against his endorsements or all that, but you got to realize how his money's tied into Berkshire. That's not endorsement level money. That's industrial scale money.
Berkshire.
So I mean, for what I know is like with a Jordan. And again, I don't get too far into the details, but with like Jordan, I know he literally owns his brand. With like Magic Johnson, I know he has interest in multiple businesses. But with LeBron, I didn't. He has an endorsement deal, and I'm not knocking the dude, but I didn't see folks standing in line to buy his shoes, or I never heard of it. Maybe I missed that.
Trust me, they do. But okay. LeBron's shoe deal is one. Now, with the Berkshire Hathaway's needle doesn't move too often, or too many percentage points to garner him X amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron owns a stake in Manchester United soccer club. I forgot the percentage how much he owns, but he has endorsement deals. Now the LeBrons, people do stand outside and pay for the LeBrons. I've been a sneaker head for a couple of years, and people do that. But he has other endorsement deals, such as these high priced athletes get watch endorsement deals, car endorsement deals, all these endorsement deals that add up. And plus, when he was playing in the league, that contract he had with the Cavs, he was getting $10-15 million a year. So it all adds up.
Mm-hmm.
And to LeBron,
I was going to say to LeBron. Okay, but no, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, to LeBron's credit, he's been very, very good with his money. Yeah, his public image has been very.
Right.
He got $20 million just from Kia, just for doing a commercial.
And plus, he been in movies. And plus, he had he been in movies. He had that show on Showtime.
That's just well, the thing is, that's kind of one of the angles that people really aren't seeing. Like if you're actually kind of following what's going on here, because I'm in LA, right? So it's LeBron mania right now, but a lot of the talk has been about what LeBron's move to LA actually meant, because it really wasn't. Look, the move, you could easily leverage a move to the Lakers. That wasn't the end game. Okay, Rich Paul just finished getting a deal established where there's going to be this series on Netflix starring the chick from the Help, the little short, kind of chubby chick. She's going to be playing Madam C.J. Walker in this series on Netflix, right? See, so LeBron has entertainment interests. Like I said, what makes that $1 billion valuation is a lot of things that are external to basketball. Basketball was the catalyst or the engine, but man, he just dude's got so much interest outside of that. That's what's giving him that $1 billion value.
So in other words, yes, he does have a lot of money to throw, to bring back the conversation. He does have a lot of money to throw at the campaign trail.
Oh, trust me, it's gonna be some Braun money thrown around, and trust me.
With his money on the face.
And he's been attacking Trump since Trump came in office. That's
exactly.
He hasn't done that before. So that tells me that he's going to LA for more than just the Lakers. There's something else that's going on politically behind the scenes that's going to put him in a position to start challenging people in 2020.
And also thinking about this in 5-10 year periods, his career is on the decline. He's 30, he'll be 35 this year. So he doesn't have too long to play, which means he's setting himself up for after his career. And then on top of that, his son is coming into the league. His son's going to get in the league. That's
a no-brainer. So for him and Wade's kid, yeah.
Right. So he may play a year with his son, but after that, he's gonna jettison himself into full-fledged focus in all of his interests.
He's Michael Jordan 2.0.
No,
I would say Magic Johnson 2.0.
Magic Johnson. Michael Jordan wasn't political at all.
Yeah.
Well, Michael Jordan wasn't. Okay, he actually bought into private prisons.
Okay. So, man, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, but then do you think that LeBron can move the needle because the metric is going to change? So yeah, he's stacking way more dollars now than Jordan did at this point in his career. But Jordan had the base, Jordan had the people, Jordan had the eyes, Jordan had the fans. So now when LeBron moves from his interest that got him to the $1 billion mark, and the new metric isn't money, return on investment, the new metric is people, it's people capital. I don't see LeBron James having that much people capital the way Jordan did, or shit, even Magic Johnson. I don't think LeBron has as much people capital as Magic Johnson did.
If LeBron win the championship in LA, you'll see that personnel capital. You'll see it.
I don't even think he has to win in LA.
I'm sorry for getting a little, off topic. I'm a huge Lakers fan. For the longest time, but I'm not gonna be a Lakers fan as long as LeBron is. I just don't like the guy. It is not anything personal. I just don't. There's just something shady about him. There's just something shady about him.
Of course.
I actually want to say that BGS put it in the chat that he's Kobe 2.0, and I agree with that. I think
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Black Gnostic.
And
he is, man. Yeah.
You got LeBron opening schools for kids. Trust me, he's planting these seeds. You may not see it from a micro standpoint. Step back and look at the bigger picture. These seeds he's dropping every now and then is building up. He does have cachet. Trust me, he does have it. And once
his image has been manufactured from day one, dude. He ain't been embroiled in no controversies or nothing like that. I mean, look, and the other thing too is we got to look at the nature of the NBA nowadays, right? It's ties than what it used to be, right? The stars are manufactured. It is what it is. I mean, look, dude, I wasn't expecting him to come here and be like a diehard bleed purple, but look, he's going to come here and he's going to be a Laker. That's what it is what it is, right? I won't view it the way I viewed Kobe growing up, Kobe same age and stuff, right? So I look at him like as a true example of what it's like to be a spectacle in one place, right? To stick it out you know, in today's context with social media and how everything is, the way millennials view things, they largely view things in a different scope. So it's not things aren't the same anymore.
You said,
you know, and one last thing with LeBron is that he's a polarizing figure. You know, you never really find folks that are kind of in the middle with him. Either folks care for him, but true that. Yeah. I mean, folks, either most folks care for him, or most folks hate him. Really care much about him. Yeah. And it's not anything that he's a bad guy. I mean, hats off to the brother, but you know, he really is a polarizing figure. I'm not sure if he's as polarizing as Kobe. I don't think even Kobe was a polarizing. Well, maybe. I don't know.
Kobe was polarizing. He was only here, right? So Kobe didn't have dude. His haters in LA are far and few. And if you're an LA based Kobe hater, you keep that to yourself, dude. You don't put that out in the open. You might get hurt, right?
I love Kobe. I love Kobe, probably even more so than Jordan, because I grew up with
Same
Kobe.
Here.
Yeah, but I agree with Lionel. All it's going to take is one ring in LA.
That's true.
And everyone will bandwagon.
Yep.
LeBron is a bandwagon.
Laker fans are notorious for that shit.
Cleveland is not a premier franchise in the same way that the Lakers was. So winning in LA puts him in a different stratosphere as it would be in Cleveland. Cleveland is just not that. Nobody really cares. They're very fair weather, right? So when LeBron left, their sales went down. Businesses closed up. That's not the same thing in LA. When Kobe retired, the businesses stayed open. The fan base stayed the same. You know, well, Jack Nicholson didn't really, show up.
He stopped doing it.
but if we go ahead and bring this around to the politics thing, will that come back to affect him on a political end with a folks saying, you see, he's kind of like a fair weather dude. He kind of left for the money, the green, the notoriety, this, that, and whatever. So, you know, will this move come back to haunt him?
Nah, Preem, he's pivoting, man. Like this, he's gonna finish up his career here, right? He's setting himself up, dude, for life after basketball. And what better place to do it, right, than California, you know? So it's like he'll ride it out with one of the most storied franchises in NBA, and then it'll be on to bigger and better things, and then let Bronny Jr. handle his business.
You know what? I didn't think about it. You know, maybe him opening up that school back home in Cleveland is kind of him throwing little crumbs back there and be like, okay, yeah. So that would help that
he's setting up for life afterwards, man.
His base is already secured in Cleveland. That's a given.
Mm-hmm.
His base, you have to remember that when he came to Cleveland back from Miami, he brought $250 million of business back to Cleveland and surrounding areas of Ohio. So
he revitalized a lot of communities.
Right. So he has that base.
Question. Ulysses and Noah, what time is you all's hangout tonight?
Oh no, we're gonna reschedule. We're gonna reschedule. I think we're gonna be setting on another day. So no, I got your text, dude. I'm sorry, man. I just been like,
no, it's okay.
Yeah, no, we'll do that on a different day.
All right. I just want to paint this point before we go to our next article. Other than LeBron going to LA, the other possibility that would really prepare him to another world will be winning in New York, then moving on to his post NBA career.
Nah, I don't do that.
Nah.
Yeah. I'm just
saying, wait. New York.
If
what? I don't give a shit about New York.
Well, New York is still a premier franchise too. I mean, it's just a matter of surrounding everybody with Porzingis. But what I'm saying here is this: you have Eric Holder in talks, right? The rumors are about Eric Holder coming out, and then you take into the power players like LeBron, and then you take in the political players like Deval Patrick, and Cory Booker and Kamala Harris and the rest of these quote unquote people of color. There's going to be a huge movement for 2020, and they LeBron could finance and sponsor a whole lot of opportunities for these people. So I do believe that LeBron is a major player and plays a pivotal role in some of these politics.
Now, one other note on Eric Holder. Yeah. On as far as as far as influence on the East Coast, yeah, absolutely. For whatever reason, we always got to have rappers and entertainers and athletes represent us like that. So, so the whole thing about it is that with Eric Holder, the thing about with Eric Holder is that he did some consulting work. He did some consulting work here in the state of California with regards to cannabis legalization and all of that. So, a lot of people don't really know that that's kind of what he was doing after he left as an attorney general. He actually ended up coming to California and did some consulting work with the state with regards to the whole legalization measures and all that. So I would say that could maybe even possibly serve as part of a presidential platform in 2020 countrywide, right? I'm just kind of connecting some dots here as well. So.
Hey, Mike, you said who else?
Jay-Z.
Oh, no, okay.
No, Jay-Z's a major player too. He basically crafted Obama's second entry into the game, but Oprah was the first entry into it.
All right, let's get to our next article. I'm going to read this one. It was initially 3 of them, but they all pretty much say the same thing around the same topic. I'll read this, then open up the mic. This is from abc.au, Australia, written by Andrew Probyn and defense reporter Andrew Green, dated July 26. Title: Donald Trump could be ready to order a strike against Iran, Australian government figures say. Should have typed this one in earlier. It's a bit of a lengthy article, so fair warning. All right. It comes amid intense sabre rattling that U.S. President Donald Trump and his Iranian counterpart Hassan Rouhani. The ABC has been told Australian defense facilities will likely play a role in identifying targets in Iran, as will British intelligence agencies. But a senior security source emphasized there was a big difference between providing accurate intelligence and analysis on Iran's facilities and being part of a kinetic mission. Developing the picture is very different to actually participating in a strike, the source said. Providing intelligence and understanding as to what is happening on the ground so that the government and allied governments are fully informed to make decisions is different to active targeting. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull said this morning he had no reason to believe the U.S. was preparing a military confrontation. President Trump has made his views clear to the whole world, but this story has not benefited from any consultation with me, the foreign minister, the defense minister, or the chief of the defense force, he said. The top secret Pine Gap Joint Defense Facility in the Northern Territory is considered crucial among the so-called Five Eyes intelligence partners, the US, UK, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, for its role in directing American spy satellites. Analysis from the little-known spy agency, Australian Geospatial Intelligence Organization, would also be expected to play a part. Canada would be unlikely to play a role in any military action in Iran, nor would the smallest Five Eyes security partner, New Zealand, sources said. Iran is a signatory to international agreements, such as the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and is not known to currently possess any weapons of mass destruction. But Mr. Rouhani has recently boasted its nation's nuclear industry is advancing at a fast pace. Last month, Iran's nuclear chief opened a new nuclear enrichment facility that he said would comply with the nuclear deal Tehran signed with world powers in 2015. Any U.S.-led strike on Iran targets would be fraught for a region bristling with tensions. Israel will have reason to be anxious about retaliation, given Iran rejects Israel's right to exist. That said, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in April invoked the so-called benign doctrine that calls on the Jewish state to ensure nations hostile to Israel be prevented from developing a nuclear weapons capability. Israel will not allow regimes to seek our annihilation to acquire nuclear weapons, Mr. Netanyahu said. Israel will not allow regimes to seek. Okay. An Australian government source said when it came to Iran, Australia relied on intelligence from its Five Eyes partners, not Israel. Government split on whether Trump's tweets are real threats. While some in the turmoil government firmly believe Mr. Trump is prepared to use military force against Iran, others maintain it might be more bluster, given the consequence of conflict with Tehran might include unpredictable, dangerous responses in the Middle East. Earlier this week, Mr. Trump fired off an all-caps tweet directed at the Iranian president, seemingly warning of war. Oh my God, this guy. To Iranian President Rouhani, I'm not going to scream, never ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious.
God bless America.
Say what?
I said, God bless America.
Man. This, okay. He was responding to Mr. Rouhani, who was quoted telling Iranian diplomats, America should know that peace with Iran is the mother of all peace, and war with Iran is the mother of all wars. Do not play with the lion's tail, else you'll regret it, he said. Mr. Trump has since adjusted his rhetoric, suggesting Washington is ready to go back to the negotiating table with Tehran for a new nuclear deal. I withdrew the United States from the horrible one-sided Iran nuclear deal, and Iran is not the same country anymore. Oh my God. He told a convention in Kansas City. We're ready to make a deal. This guy. Grappling with whether Mr. Trump's Twitter missives should be believed. Grappling with whether Mr. Trump's Twitter missives should be believed has become a global quest, and not just his tweets about Iran or North Korea. In response to the U.S. President's all-caps tweet on Monday, a high-ranking Iranian army official told the ISNA news agency, a Tehran government mouthpiece, that Mr. Trump's threat were merely psychological warfare. Let's put it nicely. General Ghulam Hussein G., the chief of the paramilitary Revolutionary Guard volunteer Basij Force, said Mr. Trump won't dare take military action against Iran. It was an assessment echoed by Iranian MP Hesmatullah F., who told Associated Press he doubted the escalating rhetoric will lead to a military confrontation. Australia is urging Iran to be a force for peace, Bishop. Foreign Minister Julie Bishop has emphasized diplomatic efforts to bring Iran to heel. Australia is urging Iran to be a force for peace and stability in the region, she told ABC's AM program on Thursday. The relationship between the United States and Iran is a matter for them. What we are looking to do is to ensure that all parties embrace peaceful and stable principles to ensure that our region is safe, Defense Industry Minister Christopher Pine, when asked whether Mr. Trump's threats against Iran should be believed, said, "Certainly, President Trump has indicated that he's a person who's prepared to act in a way that previous presidents weren't." U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis reinforced America's hard line with Iran while speaking alongside Ms. Bishop, Defense Minister Maurice Payne, and U.S. Secretary of State Michael Pompeo at the AUSMIN Osman meeting in San Francisco midweek. Mr. Mattis said Iran has been a destabilizing influence throughout the region. The only reason that the murderer Assad is still in power in Syria, the primary reason, is because Iran has stuck by him, reinforced him, funded him, he said. We see the same kind of malfeasance down in Yemen, where they're fomenting more violence down there. We've seen their disruptive capabilities demonstrated from Bahrain to the kingdom. It cannot continue to show irresponsibility as some revolutionary organization that is intent on exporting terrorism, exporting disruption across the region. So I think the president was making very clear that they're on the wrong track. Man, he cleaned that up good. The ABC understands Osman discussed Iran, largely in context of increasing sanctions on Tehran. We're concerned about its ballistic missile program, and we talked about ways of constructively engaging with Iran to prevent the development of their program, Ms. Bishop told AM. But more specifically, we talked about urging Iran not to support proxy groups, whether it's in Syria, Yemen, or elsewhere. Mr. Trump withdrew the U.S. from the Iran nuclear deal in May and now sees complete, verifiable, and total denuclearization rather than the rollback and temporary freeze of Iran's nuclear program. The U.S. plans on reinstating sanctions lifted by the Iran deal by November 4. The U.S. plans on reinstating sanctions lifted by the Iran deal by November 4th. This includes trade and investment by U.S. firms with Iran and sanctions on Iranian oil exports. All right. Anti-gravity. You sent this to, well, you actually sent it in the email, put it on the docket. What about this stuck out to you? And I'll open the mic up.
Well, this just came across my feed, and I was like, oh my God. If the Australian government is leaking this, even they are concerned that the U.S. might blunder itself into World War III trying to invade Iran. So I just thought, I was going to, share it with you guys, see what you guys think.
Anybody else?
I think that's the exact, I was going to say, I think that's the exact reason why the Australian government would leak something like that. Is because since Trump's got into office, this government hasn't necessarily shown itself to be someone who is like, manning a steady ship, right? It's a lot of up and down. It can change one day to the next. And, if you're a foreign government, you're just like, hey, look, let me kind of just throw this out there to maybe temper this a bit because, there's no definitive conclusion as to what it is the United States is trying to do from one day to the next.
What's that old poker saying as far as bluffing or not bluffing, and the person who has the upper hand is one who's willing to walk away from the table or who's not willing, who's willing to lose.
You got to know when to hold them, and you got to know when to fold them.
Right. Yeah, man. Again, like I said earlier, I hope all this, works out. But it looks like it's a situation that just, he's decided that he has to be dealt with. I don't know too much about it, but I'm glad he's taking it on.
He's not very geopolitically astute. He will walk himself.
I agree.
A war with Iran would eliminate the Republicans ever from getting back into office at this point, because the consequences would reverberate right through the region, if not throughout half of the world, because there's so many other unknowns that can come from an attack on Iran. It's just not worth it at this point, if at all, for any American president. The shutting down of the Straits of Hormuz, the alliance that they have economically with Qatar, would destroy Qatar almost immediately overnight. The alliances that they have in Iraq and Syria, as well as Lebanon, and then you take in the southern or some of the eastern portions of Africa. We know that there are Shiite Muslims inside the north of Nigeria that are still powerful right now. The alliance that they have with Venezuela, it's just not worth it. I just don't see the value in attacking Iran, other than for Israel. If Israel wants to fight beyond the Golan Heights, let them go fight then. But they know they can't beat Iran single-handedly, so they will need the United States to go do it. And Saudi Arabia knows they don't have the manpower to do it either, because they can't beat a couple of guys with sandals and towels wrapped around their head inside Yemen.
No, that's true. They what's his name? The crown prince of Saudi Arabia, the soon-to-be king guy. Was it Mohammed bin
MBS? Yeah,
Mohammed bin Salman. He thought he was gonna mop up Yemen real quick to give himself a boost, and he put himself, now what is it, 3-year stalemate in Yemen. Lots of death, complete destruction of the country, a real mess.
Well, he won't send his guys into Yemen, but he'll send Eritreans inside Yemen, and Sudanese people inside Yemen, but he won't send his guys down there.
Well, if he sent them, they wouldn't be much good.
Well, they've been losing. They've been losing at the border. They've been losing at the border, and they've been capturing a lot of Saudi Arabian APCs, and armored personnel carriers, as well as weapons. So it sounds to me like they're leaving a lot of these, the Saudi Arabian soldiers are actually bailing out and getting out of their trucks and leaving, saying, well, it's not worth fighting for, and we'd rather not get killed, so we'll take the chance of just jumping out here and leaving the vehicles behind.
Hey, I've got a great, I've got a hypothetical question. From a cataclysmic standpoint, which would have been more cataclysmic, a war with U.S. with Iran, or the U.S. with North Korea?
North Korea, because the proximity of the war.
Okay, thank you. Right, they would decimate South Korea just with their conventional weapons in the first few days. South Korea and southern Japan.
Yeah, because you can't duck those weapons because they're so close to you. Go ahead, Lando.
No, I was saying I was just piggybacking on what Noah said. He said South Japan. Even though South Japan on the map looks far away, it's not that far, especially with the fallout of, I'm not saying the fallout of nuclear war, but the fallout of the destruction is going to blow into South Japan. And these, go ahead.
I was just going to say, keep in mind that North Korea is not some, prehistoric state. They have a pretty modern military for what it stands for. It's built for asymmetric warfare. So they have these midget submarines, that only holds about 2 or 3 people on there, but have all these missiles loaded in on them. They can creep right into your harbor and take out quite a few vessels before they even decide to take off.
Any other points want to be brought up on open mic?
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, how serious do you think this Iran thing is? Since the Mueller investigation is, heating up, do you think he'll kind of play the, let's start this war, kind of like Bush, to solidify himself?
That's exactly what they will do, to use it as a distraction to keep them from being impeached. But the problem is, a war that they will lose could destroy, can bring the United States into one party.
And that's the
Because the
Democratic
Republican Party will be responsible for the failure.
which
Right.
means,
Oh, good.
which would then means, taking it back to our last point, the Eric Holder, the Duvall fellow, LeBron James, they will have more leverage, in my opinion, to win.
Yeah, you're gonna have that millennial movement of Democrats, showing what they call democratic socialists. They're in play right now. You got the young girl from New York, Ortiz. All of the under 40 players would actually rise up. It's just that it's the right time for them to actually participate. Whereas your GOP and your Republican wingnuts, those guys are on their way out the door, and they really don't have any strategies at this point other than to attack Iran.
What's the age? You have to be president, what, 37? Yeah, at least be 37 years old to be president of the United States.
35, I think.
Oh.
They've thrown her name around as a future presidential candidate already. Ocasio-Cortez.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's too early.
I know I believe it's too early, but there's already that discussion, because to kind of speak to what Mike was talking about with regards to the millennial influence on the Democratic Party right now. There's like this whole hashtag walk away movement that's trending.
What is that?
That's basically this whole, I don't know if this is another one of those Soros funded subversive social media psyops, right? Where you generate a hashtag and then people they create like a social media post or a video or something like that, and then they throw the hashtag walk away in it, and then talk about their frustrations with the Democratic Party and why they're walking away.
Oh my God. All of this sound like distraction.
Well, it's a strategy. It's actually a very good strategy. It's splitting the Democratic Party in half to get rid of the old and bring in the new. And most of these people really don't have any real strategy at all. I mean, after the hashtag, right? You have this whole movement for like gender fluidity, and now you have Chelsea Manning running for office. Same-sex bathrooms. That's their talking points. They really don't have an economic strategy at all. And as soon as you start bringing up reparations for Black people, all of a sudden the discussion goes off the table.
Are you talking about just the regular Democrats, or are you talking about the social Democrats?
Say that again, Noah.
Are you talking about the regular Democrats, the corporate Democrats, or are you talking about the social Democrats?
The whole entire party. The whole entire party doesn't really want to talk about that because they really don't have a strategy.
Wait, Mike, what did you say about reparations?
No, what I'm saying is that when they'll talk about same-sex bathrooms, but they won't talk about reparations.
No, actually, you know what I found? They actually do talk about reparations. The problem is that Black folks can't. Okay, never mind. I'm not going to open that can of worms.
No. I understand what you're
light a
saying.
fire, brother.
No, I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that they can't use that anymore at all. So now they're using same-sex bathroom, right? So that becomes a talking point, and now everybody's out there protesting about that. But the real core topics that they should be talking about, they avoid it.
This Chelsea Manning thing is
But something that I've heard and that I've seen is not just the walk away folks that are kind of like, listen, some of the walk away folks are saying they've just gone off the rails. The left has, the Democratic Party. They don't like the violent, they don't like the vitriol, they don't like the hate. And it's just leaving a bad taste in their mouth. They aren't necessarily like fans of the right or fans of Trump, but they just like, this doesn't represent us no more, as Democrats. And then you also have some folks that are Democrats or liberals, I don't know the difference between the two, but who are purposely saying that we are purposely going to vote red because we want to blow this Democratic Party up the way it is right now. We need to blow this thing up and start from scratch. It's a hot mess. So you have the two. You have the ones that are walking away and that may just be, that may not do anything, vote either way. And then you have others that are like, they're absolutely going to go ahead and vote red because they want the destruction of this current rendition of the Democratic Party to just blow up and just start from scratch again to where it represents true liberalism, whatever that is.
I think that's going to happen anyway, because remember how the last time, the Hillary Clinton and the DNC kind of really screwed Bernie Sanders.
Exactly.
This is really his last time to run. So I think if they screw him again, you might go for a third party, and that will be the beginning of the split.
And I really see this as, and I really can't knock him. If this is a form of payback for that whole Bernie thing, I can't really knock him because they really did, mess him up. I wasn't a fan of either one of them, but I see that's why this they're unapologetic about the split. They're kicking folks like Feinstein, I think, out there in California. She didn't get the endorsement. And they're just going against the grain, and they're just putting up anybody. They're just putting up people, just anybody but the establishment Democrats, because they were just so wrong with the whole Bernie thing. They're like, okay, y'all are gonna go ahead and do us like that. I think we're just gonna take it. Watch this. And I think that's kind of what's happening. But the people they're putting up are, talk about polarizing, or just turning away the base, and the base is like, who are these people? Abolish ICE, no more prisons. This, how are you going to pay for this? And they're kind of like, no, so yeah, it looks like a shit show, from this point of view.
I think when they say, get rid of ICE and all that stuff, I think what they're saying is to tear down those agencies that have been involved in the the culpability of the ruling establishment. I think that's what they're trying to do, is tear down the pillars that are around these establishments, or these established politicians who benefit from it. At this point, I don't foresee agencies disappearing, but I do see the point that they're trying to make. Although I don't agree with their position, because when it came to African Americans, they really wasn't concerned about the mistreatment of black people through the system. It really wasn't them that were speaking out. It was really just black people speaking out against it.
A quick question. You always talked about Israel and Palestine. Do y'all think when a young lady said, Alexandria Cortez, when she said that Israel was occupying Palestine, the occupation of Palestine, you think that was a slip, or you think she actually meant that, and what did she mean by that?
It's an accurate statement. It's actually the way you're supposed to say it. That they.
Yeah, I mean, it's a reality.
Yeah, Israel is occupying Palestine.
Definitely on the progressive side of the Democrats, they are very much against the Israeli occupation, and they're like, we're supporting Israel with money and arms, and the more we do it, the more the world hates us, right? So why bother even continue?
Okay. Now, somebody school me on this and give me the quick and dirty. From my vantage point, I'm seeing that they're, like Jews, who I would consider Jews, New York liberals, New York Jews or whatever, for the most part, they tend to be liberal or Democrats. But then the Democratic Party has an issue with, Israel and Palestine. How does all that shit work?
No, the progressive wing is who has the philosophical and moral and ethical issue with the. It's not the Democratic or you say liberal, neoliberal base at large. It's not them. It's that. I mean, if you want to call it quote unquote fringe or that social Democrat, justice Democrat, whatever the term we want to roll with that. I think justice Democrat is what they're going with, or socialist Democrat. They're the ones who actually bring up the illegal Israeli occupation as a hot button topic, because that largely drives U.S. policy, geopolitically speaking, to a large degree, and that's a problem. So
Yeah.
they are the portion of the Democratic Party who is looking to actually address that as some sort of as a solution to a lot of our problems here and abroad.
Right, and it's not only the Democrats; it's also the Republicans that support, or the establishment, I should say, on both sides.
It's
and
both
that's
sides.
because of the APEC lobby. There's no congressman who can speak up against them without angering I think it's called the American Israeli organization, something like that. And they're
American Israeli Political Affairs Committee.
Yeah, what was that? Repeat again.
Yeah, APEC. What's it called?
American Israeli Political Affairs Committee.
Yeah. So they're going to either withdraw support from whoever the congressman or the senator who speaks out against Israel, or they're going to fund the opponent, whoever the opponent might be. So they're extremely, extremely powerful. And this is basically a foreign group. They're not Americans for the most part.
Okay, appreciate it.
Any other points you brought up before you close out the show?
Yeah, I actually had a couple of articles I wanted to drop in there. Just give me a few seconds.
Okay.
I knew there was going to be a lot on the docket. I just didn't want to pile the docket up with more. Let me see.
So how's everybody doing today?
Pretty good. It rained all day today, and I loved it.
Really?
Oh yeah, man. I have all the doors open, all the windows open, man, and
cool breeze.
Hell yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a pass on that one. All right. Let's see. This BBC one, Mike?
Yeah.
All right. Gotta get to it. All right. Our next article comes from BBC.com. Title. Oh, it was written 6 hours ago. Okay. Title: Andrew Bunsen. U.S. hits Turkey with sanctions over jail pastor. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on Turkey's justice and interior ministers over the continued detention of American pastor Andrew Bunsen. The evangelical from North Carolina has been held for nearly 2 years over alleged links to political groups. We believe he's a victim of unfair and unjust detention, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said. Turkey has said U.S. demands for Mr. Bunsen release are unacceptable, adding it will respond to hostility. We call on the U.S. administration to roll back from this wrong decision, the Turkish foreign minister said in a statement on Wednesday. Without delay, there will be a response to this aggressive attitude that will not serve any purpose, it continued. Speaking to reporters earlier, Ms. Sanders said, "We've seen no evidence that Pastor Bunsen has done anything wrong." She said that the two Turkish ministers have both played leading roles in the arrest of the U.S. pastor. As a result, any property of interest in property of both ministers within the U.S. jurisdiction is blocked, and U.S. persons are generally prohibited from engaging in transactions with them, she said. Ms. Sanders also said that President Trump had discussed the matter with his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, multiple times. The U.S. Treasury Department later said in a statement that Turkey's Justice Minister, Abdullah Hamid Gül, and Interior Minister, Süleyman Soylu, are targeted because they serve as leaders of Turkish government organizations responsible for implementing Turkey's serious human rights abuses. Last week, President Trump warned Turkey it would face large sanctions if it did not release Mr. Brunson immediately. The BBC's Mark Lowen said it was unprecedented for the U.S. to hit a NATO ally with sanctions such as this. Following Wednesday's announcement, the Turkish lira lost 1.6% of its value to fall to 5 points against the U.S. dollar. Who is Andrew Brunson? Mr. Brunson is a long-term resident in Turkey. He lived with his wife and 3 children while working as the pastor of the small Isrim Resurrection Church, which has a congregation of about 2 dozen. The authorities accused him of having links with the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, and the Gulenist movement, which Turkey blames for a 2016 failed coup. Mr. Brunson has denied charges of espionage, but faces up to 35 years in jail if found guilty. He was moved into house arrest last month for health reasons, but U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said this was not enough. We have seen no credible evidence against Mr. Brunson, Mr. Pompeo tweeted at the time. Turkey's foreign minister said it had shared necessary information with the U.S., but insisted the case should be left with its judiciary. What is Turkey's motivation? Mr. Brunson is one of 20 Americans who were charged after the coup 2 years ago, according to the New York Times. More than 50,000 people were arrested in Turkey in President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's huge post-coup crackdown. He blames Pennsylvania-based Muslim cleric Fethullah Gulen for the attempt, but Mr. Gulen denies any involvement. Turkey wants the U.S. to agree to his extradition. President Erdogan has indicated he will swap the pastor for the priest, Mr. Gulen. U.S. support for Kurdish forces fighting in Syria's civil war has also angered President Erdogan. He views them as an extension of the PKK. The PKK, a Turkish Kurdish rebel group fighting for autonomy since the 1980s, is considered a terrorist group by Turkey and the U.S. It seems like the U.S. is fighting mighty hard to get this guy out of jail. And the reason stated in this article, to me, don't cut it as to why, don't add up as to why they're fighting pretty hard for this guy to be released from jail. Anyone?
Say that again.
I was saying the U.S. is fighting really hard to get this guy from to get this guy to be released from jail, and the points expressed in the article from the U.S. point of view as to why he should not be in jail don't cut it as to why they're fighting this hard to get this guy out of jail.
He's a spy, for the most part.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. Even though he said he's not a spy. That's that's my reason as to why why you fighting so hard to get this guy to jail. If you and him are saying
because
he's not a spy.
He's a piece on the chessboard. They
I
can
agree.
use him. They can use him to justify the sanctions, because they know that Turkey's not going to give him up unless they trade him for Fethullah, and the U.S. is not going to give up Fethullah because Fethullah is a product of the Central Intelligence. They have no interest in giving him up. So
U.S. Central Intelligence, or Turkey Central Intelligence?
U.S.
No, Fethullah is a product of U.S. Central Intelligence.
Okay, so he knows too much for them to There would be almost a lopsided trade or swap.
The CIA grooms people. It collects people. That's its job. It collects people to do the dirty business that the White House can't do. So
Right.
Petula is a very valuable piece, uh, 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 for CIA, because he doesn't just operate within the United States. He operates outside the United States too, in multiple other countries. So what I'm saying here is that the United States knows that Turkey's not going to give up this pastor unless Turkey gets Fethullah in return. Now, the United States is not going to give him up, so Turkey's just going to use this guy as if that's their Snowden, so to speak, right?
Okay.
He is to Turkey what Snowden is to Russia, and what and Fethullah is the same thing to the United States. So they're not just going to give up these pieces willingly unless it's something major, and they can justify putting sanctions on Turkey. And now you see Turkey tiptoeing into the BRICS, tiptoeing closer to Russia and Iran now too, which is unheard of before, because Iran had never really gotten along with Turkey, because they're two diametrically opposing religious parties. Turkey supports the Muslim Brotherhood, and where you have Iran, who supports the Shiite movements and all throughout the Middle East and Africa. So they're diametrically opposed, but they're actually moving closer together politically, because it makes sense, because they both have a vested interest in seeing the United States get out of the region.
Right. And to what kind of lends more, I guess, legitimacy to him possibly being a spy is that, technically it's against international law to use clergy as, intelligent assets or for any kind of political or military purposes. But the CIA routinely, flaunts that all the time.
Any other?
Yeah, that's all I'd say. But
Okay. Any other points before we get to this next article? No? All right, let me share my screen. Excuse me. This next article comes from Press TV. Iran seizes huge cache of weapons in central province of Kerman. Iran has discovered and seized a considerable amount of semi-heavy weapons and ammunition in the central province of Kerman. Kerman Prosecutor General Hoda Solari said Wednesday that the large arms cache has been smuggled into the country through eastern borders for terrorist attacks. From the place where the cargo was stored, large quantities of ammunition and related weapons, including 2 anti-aircraft semi-heavy guns, 7,400 anti-aircraft bullets, 23 items of 73mm anti-armor rockets, and 3 motorcycles, 2 of which were specially designed for impassable areas, were discovered and seized, he added. Solari warned that security, intelligence, and judicial officials will not allow thugs, no jokes there, and counter-revolutionary elements to endanger the country's security. The judiciary, in cooperation with intelligence, security, and law enforcement agencies, has put the identification and dismantling of terror groups on its agenda, he added. Over the past years, Iranian security forces and border guards have engaged in clashes with terror groups, many of whom crossed the country borders with Pakistan and Iraq to carry out attacks inside the country. Last month, at least 11 members of Iran's Islamic Revolution Guards Corps, or IRGC, lost their lives in a terror attack in the village of Darai in Marivan District, Kurdistan Province, which led to an explosion at an arms depot. During the clashes, a large number of terrorists were killed and several others fled with injuries. Also, in a statement on July 14, the the Najaf Ashraf base of the IRGC ground forces said it had smashed a terror outfit and killed 3 terrorists in the west of the country near the border of Iraq. It added that it had identified and completely destroyed a counter-revolutionary terrorist group that planned to carry out acts of sabotage and measures against national security after crossing the border into Iran and Naldish area in Kermanshah province. All right.
Well, I was just gonna add on to this that Pakistan actually was attacked last week by ISIS. Just as a lateral talking point to this, and the Russians this morning also busted an operation inside Kaliningrad with ISIS planning an attack against Moscow. So you're starting to see the movement of weapons, the movement of terrorist groups right up into Russia's border and right into the heart of where China is playing around in, such as Pakistan and Afghanistan, and as well as Iran. That there is an imminent threat that's about to happen just either by Labor Day or after Labor Day, after the the elections, midterm elections.
So what you're saying is, like you said, the southern borders of Russia, where the Middle East are at, there's some action going on there, and something could happen there.
I'm saying this is all strategic.
Okay.
All of those. Remember last week, Israel sent buses into Syria through the Golan Heights to take all of these would-be white, supposedly white helmets. These guys are ISIS members, right? So they put on a couple of white helmets and call themselves the Red Cross, so to speak, and act like they're really helping people, but in reality, they're actually terrorists. So Israel actually funneled these guys out through the Golan Heights and then in through Jordan and got them out of the region. But where did they go? Now you're starting to see the movement of weapons and personnel or terrorist cells, I should say, into Iran, into Russia's spirit influence inside Kaliningrad as well as Belarus, and in the Caucasus, and you're seeing them in what do you call that
I'm looking at the map right now.
what you call that, Iran?
I'm above
Pakistan. Sorry.
Above Iran, you got. Are you saying they're trying to move up in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, or not in that area?
No. You may see them go back into Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan.
Turkmenistan. So, okay, so they're gonna go to the eastern part of the Caspian Sea, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and then Kazakhstan. Then they can still get to Russia. So they're trying to get to Russia.
Yeah, they have every. Afghanistan is really the place where they would like to go through. But in Afghanistan, the Russians have been supporting the Taliban to keep the members of ISIS from creeping up.
And you're saying this is ISIS is trying to creep up to Russia?
Yeah, they've been trying to get into Russia for since the establishment of the Syrian war.
Okay, so who is funding them and making this long trek through the stand countries to get to Russia?
There's multiple sources of income for ISIS, right? So when ISIS was in Syria moving multiple trucks of oil out of Syria into Turkey, that was what paid their their dues. So they were getting paid through Bitcoin, which is why Bitcoin became so popular.
Mm-hmm.
So the money was being transferred through that until the Russians got involved in Syria in 2015 and started bombing, the logistics operations going back and forth between Turkey and Syria. So that's when their money flow stopped. But then you saw a entity called the White Helmets prop up, and United States, UK, France started funding this supposed humanitarian effort by these White Helmets at 100 to 200 million dollars, which is a lot of money for a few hundred guys to a few hundred to 1,000 guys who are allegedly rescuing people from a chemical attack. How are you rescuing people from a chemical attack with no gloves?
Okay, so the ISIS group, which is in Iraq, Syria, parts of Iran, they're going to make their trek through they're going to coalesce in Afghanistan. Why from Afghanistan?
Say that again.
They're going to go east from their positions now in Iraq, Syria, and Iran. Go east into Afghanistan in order to go north.
Right.
Now, why through Afghanistan again? Well, why start in Afghanistan to go north? Why start in Afghanistan again?
Afghanistan is just one location, but it's a primary location to cause disruption for Iran to the west, and then back up north. They can make their way in through the Turkmenistan or Uzbekistan up into Russia. Okay,
now I know the Chinese Belt and Road system is going through Kazakhstan. Say they are successful going through Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan into Kazakhstan in order to get to Russia. Would they interrupt this Belt and Road initiative by China going through Kazakhstan?
They could, but if the goal is to get to Moscow, then they wouldn't have any interest in disturbing the BRI.
Okay. Oh, okay. Let me back up. Let me back up the. All right. I think that was too much. Oh, no, it's not. All right. So instead of going through, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia would pose too much of a force for them. So the other way is the route of least resistance in order to get to Moscow.
Russians have military personnel heavily inside Armenia.
Okay. So they'll stop them, and okay, all right.
It wouldn't make it past Russian security forces inside Armenia.
Okay.
So, the United States has a brigade inside Georgia.
Okay, so going through Armenia and Georgia is a no-go, obviously, because you'll be stopped and killed there. So they're going a long route around the eastern part of the Caspian Sea to get to Moscow. Now, what makes them think Russia is going to allow them to just invade the border and even get to Moscow?
Because they can sneak in pretty easily because they blend in because that's who they are, right? Most of your ISIS members are not actually Arabs. They're actually East Asians.
I don't see how, well, I don't see how. I don't see how they think Putin will allow them to freely just, well, how am I trying to say this? I don't see how they think Putin will, man, I'm trying to say this. I don't think Putin will let this fester for long.
Well, I agree with your assessment, but what I'm saying is most of your ISIS members did come from those regions, so they look just alike, right? So you can't really tell the difference between an ISIS member and a non-ISIS member because pretty much their families and everybody are pretty intertwined, especially if you're talking about Chechnya.
Okay.
The only way the Russians would know is if they have a tab or an index on. If they had an index on each and every individual, but the reason why they got involved in Syria is to take them out before they even get to Russia.
Oh, okay. So they had a vested interest already because they don't want that threat to creep up in their territory. So stamp it out where it began.
Exactly. In China, you have to remember that there are Chinese ISIS members inside Syria too. I think there's about 4,000 of them.
So if they were to get all the way to Kazakhstan, I know I've looking at documentaries about the Belt and Road system. Eastern Kazakhs are Chinese, so they can splinter, one go west and one go east, because the western regions of China, there's a big Muslim influence there. From what I know.
What did you say?
There's a big. I've been looking at a few documentaries about the China Belt and Road system, and they're going into Kazakhstan. The border between Kazakhstan, it's a city there.
Are you talking about Urumqi?
Huh?
Are you talking about Urumqi in China?
The city between that's clear. There's next to the border of Kazakhstan and China, where the rail system is going to carry goods from China to the Western European. But what I'm trying to say is there's a big Muslim influence in the western part of China. So let's say they get through Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan. One group can go west and heads toward Russia, and one group can go east to the Kazakhstan Chinese border, where there's already a through the videos I've seen, you have militarized police on guard because they're trying to stamp out Muslim terrorists in the area already. So these guys, if they go east to the border of Kazakhstan and China, they can just cause more trouble there. I'm trying to find this city.
Right. Actually, it's not even just the city. That whole area is Muslim. Xinjiang is, although they're a smaller population compared to the Han Chinese, the Chinese government has tried to, ship in more of their people into that region. But it's predominantly Muslim. Kazakhstan is, Tajikistan. What's another?
Uzbekistan.
Uzbekistan. They're all pretty much Muslim countries. There are not Muslim populations, but for the most part, yes. And so, then in Xinjiang specifically, they are making a huge effort to clamp down on all the Muslims, not just for terrorist reasons, but because Xinjiang wants to separate from China. They have a huge separatist movement there, kind of like in Tibet. So they have not regular police, they have like basically paramilitary there, and they're grabbing people and throwing them in re-education camps, quote unquote, where they make them repeat things like, I no longer believe in Islam, I believe in the Chinese Communist Party, that kind of stuff.
Now, Mike, I agree with your assessment that you have to stamp this out in this region, in Syria, Iraq region now, because if it gets into these Stan regions, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, there's a lot of Muslims there.
That's where they came from. That's where they came from.
They came from.
So keep in mind that in Syria there was 120,000 terrorists there before the Russians got there, which is why the Syrian government was having such a hard time, because it's not a fair fight. You can't really tell civilian from terrorists. So what happens is you get swallowed into a guerrilla warfare, and you're losing because they have advanced weapons that you don't have, because they're getting supplied by Israel and NATO, which is what they found a couple of weeks ago down in the southern portion of Syria, that most of these weapons came from Israel and NATO-based countries, including the United States.
Okay.
If you had 120,000 guys marching to Russia right now, it would be a bloodbath. Not just because they would take out the terrorists, but because the terrorists would have advantages of playing asymmetric warfare on your rail system, on your metro system, on your schools, all your malls and stuff like that would be invaded. You wouldn't be able to respond to an attack like that because you just don't have the resources.
Russia don't have for the asymmetrical warfare.
No one does. Not even the United States can respond to an attack like that. I mean, you see, like in Ferguson, they had, MRAPs, all these APCs, all these guys running around with, these camo uniforms inside of an urban center. That's all posturing to intimidate the black population. But if you really had an uprising of 120,000 people across the United States with ATGMs and shoulder fire, surface to air missiles and things of that nature, there's nothing the United States can do about that.
Because I was thinking, if they got, I understand they're from here, they got family here in these in the stand regions of the world. They get to those, they come back to those regions and recruit more people to join their forces. That was my thinking.
Right. There's terrorist cells all throughout that region, which is what the Russians are trying to prevent. Is to knock them out now. Same thing with Iran. Iran went in there and said, we're going to clean these guys out on the ground. Russia, you take care of these guys from the air, watch our backs. In Syria, we'll just link up, when we see you.
Okay, I got it. I'm understanding more now. Okay.
Right, and they'll continue to grow.
Yeah,
especially in Xinjiang.
And I agree. You don't want to get you don't want this thing to get out of hand. Leave it in this area, stamp it out, do whatever you can, but get rid of them now. You don't want them coming up here.
Yeah, those are the Pookie and Ray Rays of that society.
Well, the article did say thugs, so.
Well, not necessarily. But it's kind of like the story of the Middle East is, the people there were, pretty moderate, modern, basically almost, if not secular, pretty close to secular. For example, Iraq under Saddam Hussein was basically an atheist country, but with a foreign intervention that destroys the country, what they retreat back to is their religion, and so that's kind of what's been happening primarily in the Middle East. But as there's more interventions and stand areas right now, that's kind of the trend it's going to go to as well.
All right. Any other points want to be made here before we get to after hours?
Yeah, there was there was a couple of more articles that I wanted to just discuss real quick. Well, I guess we can save it for next week.
Okay.
It was about Venezuela, Nicaragua.
Oh yeah, that we can go on for another 2 hours on that one. Mm-hmm. Don't forget to tune in Friday.
Is that I know you're about to shut it down, but Nicaragua is the is there a coup or something going on over there right now? Something's happening over there right now, right? That's the one that's next to Costa Rica. Yeah, it is next to Costa Rica. Okay, yeah.
The U.S. State Department wants to overthrow the Nicaraguan government because they are the last bastion of communism inside Central America and Latin America. For the most part, Nicaragua and Venezuela are basically partners in crime, so to speak. Even though they're not really criminals, but they both share the same ideology as Cuba. So there's a trifecta of states that are stronger together than they are individually. So if the United States can take down Nicaragua, then they don't have to worry about Nicaragua getting involved if they invade Venezuela, because.
And one last really quick question: do you think what's happening there in Venezuela is part of the failed system, or do you think there were outside hands that kind of made that place turn into a shithole right now?
There's a variety of issues that happen with Venezuela. The main issue is that the United States instigated their economic posture by putting sanctions on them.
Okay.
So as an alternative, they created something called the Petro that was created on behalf of the Russians to ride on the the alternative system to the SWIFT financial banking system. So there's something called the SPF created by the Russians that is going to go into play live by next year or by early 2020. That's going to take the dollar right out of the equation. So Iran is also working on a cryptocurrency system on the blockchain as well. And when you take Iran on your OPEC members, which is Iran and Venezuela, as well as Russia, off of the dollar, then what that does to the dollar from trading oils, then that crushes the dollar. It'll devalue it.
And this right here is a side note, but a couple of months ago, didn't that Maduro throw out the idea of doing a crypto, I think, backed by his oil or something like that?
No, they started it.
It's already done.
It's called a Petro. It's called a Petro.
Yeah, they started.
Okay.
All right. So don't forget to tune in Friday. We got our Economics Friday. Same bad time, same bad channel. So with that said, talk to you later.
Let's go, Bush.